Chapter 1550. A two-legged sheep from the ancient Desolation region had killed his way into their base camp and turned the world upside down, causing them to lose so many peerless sages. How could they not take revenge for this humiliation? Kill, 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 kill. The eyes of these peerless sages were red with killing intent that shot into the sky and startled the surrounding mountains and rivers. For a long time, Lin Sun's aura and sharpness were completely suppressed. This made Ruo Wu's heart clench. Is it really not possible? She sighed in her heart. At the end of the day, although Lin Sun had become a sage and his combat strength was extraordinary, he was still too young to cultivate in the sage realm. Otherwise, how could those old things suppress him? Excited cheers erupted in the city of Dao protectors. The powerful means that Lin Sun had displayed earlier had shocked them, chilled them, and made them unable to accept it. But now, when they saw Lin Sun being suppressed, how could they not be excited and overjoyed? It was as if they were about to see a great enemy being killed. There was an unconcealable sense of excitement and anticipation. On top of the city wall, Bai Jinxiong let out a long breath and said, "The outcome has been decided. This kid won't be able to escape, even if he has wings." Suppress. A young man holding a halberd that was shrouded in green divine flames roared and slashed down. Clang. Lin Sun, who was defending against the other attacks, was caught off guard and was forced to take a few steps back before he could stabilize himself. Slash. On the other side, a woman in purple clothes seized this opportunity. Cruelty flashed in her eyes. She had been waiting for this opportunity for a long time and slashed out without hesitation. Ruo Wu's expression changed. Bang! A lifelike divine beast appeared behind Lin Sun. It was filled with the aura of a sage and clashed head-on with the opponent's sword. Rumble. Amidst the deafening explosion, Lin Sun's body suddenly sank. He couldn't take it anymore and fell into the void, smashing into the ravine. Luckily, he wasn't in trouble. At this moment, Ruo Wu was just about to relax when the other peerless sages seized the opportunity and attacked. They were all old monsters that had lived for countless years and had extremely rich combat experience. Every attack was earth-shattering and extremely terrifying. Lin Sun was defeated. Although his cultivation was powerful and his foundation was unparalleled, he seemed to be unable to withstand the siege of more than 10 peerless sages. In the end, he was so shaken that he coughed blood. Ruo Wu couldn't help but clench her jade-like hands, and she unconsciously bit her cherry lips until they bled. Her starry eyes stared fixedly at the scene, and she was already prepared to risk her life to help. Lin Sun couldn't die. As long as he was there, the realm of ancient desolation would have a chance to redeem themselves in a 9-realm battlefield. Die! At this moment, Lai Yu and the other 17 peak saints didn't intend to delay any longer, and they attacked ruthlessly. In an instant, divine light surged through the heavens and the earth while the light of the Tao flowed. The peerlessly surging energy of the Saint Tao seemed to have covered the heavens and the earth, and was practically on the verge of crushing the heavens and the earth. The terrifying fluctuations caused the faces of countless people in the city of Dao protectors to change. Even Bai Jinxiong couldn't help being shocked. In the face of such a fatal blow, Lin Sun, whose cheeks were slightly pale, did not get angry. Instead, he laughed and whistled. Open. At this moment, a boundless, scorching aura rose into the sky from his body. His entire body seemed to have undergone some kind of transformation. His cultivation was still that of a Zhu Xiang true saint, but his power was rising steadily, and it pierced through the heavens and the earth. The void within a radius of 1,000 miles trembled and wailed incessantly, as if it was bowing its head in submission. Then he pressed out with one hand. Boom! The attacks and the treasures that were pouring down like tidewater all stopped abruptly, as if they were blocked by a myriad of mountains. Then they exploded with a bang. Between the heavens and the earth, a rain of light flew, and divine light flowed. It was turbulent and chaotic, and countless exclamations sounded at the same time. Meanwhile, Lin Sun's figure had already stepped into the sky, and he had broken through the encirclement, turned the situation around, and swept away the previous situation of being suppressed. The magnificent light of the Tao was like a rain of light, drifting and lingering around Lin Sun like a dream. His spirit, qi, and spirit seemed to be completely in harmony with the heavens and the earth. He stood there casually, and he had an unshakable momentum. The void within 1,000 miles wailed, as if it was bowing its head to a ruler. At this moment, countless onlookers were dumbfounded. Lin Sun was about to die, but the situation was reversed at this moment. It was so sudden that no one had expected it, and the change of Lin Sun's aura was even more shocking. Damn it! On the city wall, Bai Jianxiong cursed in a low voice, and her face was gloomy. Before, he thought that the battle was about to end, and he was excited. He never thought that there would be another change, which made him feel bad all of a sudden. Ruo Wu, on the other hand, felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders, and her entire body relaxed. This fellow has always been so unexpected. That's right. How could a figure like him be suppressed so easily? On the battlefield, Lai Yu and the other 17 top sages also looked uncertain. At this moment, Lin Sun gave them a feeling of nirvana and rebirth, as if he had been reborn. It was hard for them to believe. He was obviously at the peak of the true saint realm. How could there be such a strange change? My art of the divine Tao shall begin now, Lin Sun murmured in his heart. His eyes narrowed slightly, as if he was recalling the past. In a previous battle, he released the 3 peerless Tao to the extreme and exerted his own Tao and Dharma with all his strength. Even though he'd been constantly suppressed and was in an extremely dangerous situation, amidst this bloody slaughter allowed him to obtain a form of comprehension, and it pushed open a completely new door. This door was related to creating one's own Dharma. Thousands of secret skills and all kinds of wonderful methods were created by others. Only by creating one's own Dharma could it be perfectly in line with one's own Tao. Lin Sun had thought about this problem before, but it was too vague after all. It was like looking at flowers in the fog or fishing out the moon in the water. It was also this battle that allowed him to understand where he should start with his law. That was to integrate qi, spirit, and body refining into one furnace, and forge one's own Tao and Dharma. All Dharma returned to its origin, and when one's Dharma was achieved, this also made Lin Sun completely understand that if he wanted to be invincible in this realm, he must have his own invincible Dharma. The palm that reversed the situation just now was born of Lin Sun's enlightenment. The power was so strong that even Lin Sun was surprised. Of course, even if he didn't realize this, Lin Sun also had means to reverse the situation, but he didn't have to expose the real trump card of forbidden passing at that time. Kill him, Lai Yu roared. The change of Lin Sun's breath made them all feel bad, and their attacks became more and more fierce. However, Lin Sun at this moment was not the same as before. After comprehending it, the world was vast, and the world was vast. The entire realm was different. If he couldn't understand it, it was like being at the bottom of a well, and there was only one side of the sky in front of him. Just like this, when he fought again, Lin Sun's attack method was completely different from before. Whoosh! 3,000 Taishian sword qi swept out, and the essence qi and spirit imprinted in each sword qi perfectly matched with the Tao, body refining, soul, and cultivation, producing a kind of charm of nature. Essence is the only one. Boom! In merely an instant, all the attacks were shattered and slashed apart by the boundless sword qi, and it forced some peerless figures to have no choice but to dodge. That's it, Lin Sun laughed. In the past, the power of the 3 peerless paths was independent of each other. Although they could echo and connect with each other, they were not really in harmony after all. Yet now, when he attacked, the energy of the 3 paths towards the Tao had started to fuse and become inseparable. Moreover, the might they created had multiplied explosively. Only when the 3 paths were united could the essence be the only one, and the invincible Dharma would be formed here. Kill! The faces of those top sages became more and more gloomy, and they attacked with all their strength as if they were crazy. Before, Lin Sun was firmly suppressed by them, but in the blink of an eye, there seemed to be signs of reversal. How could they accept this? Today, I will kill you old dogs as a sacrifice to my dharma. At the same time, Lin Sun also attacked boldly. After comprehending the mystery of the three paths into one, it was like opening a door, and there were many inspirations in his mind, which made him have a strong desire to verify. Clang! The broken blade slashed out furiously, like a galaxy descending from the nine heavens. A heaven-defying, murderous aura swept out in all directions. The power was more than twice as strong as before. Chapter 1551. Boom! Amidst the deafening sound of collision, a halberd wrapped in green divine flames was forcibly sent flying away. The owner of the halberd flew backward as if struck by lightning, with blood flowing out his eyes, nose, and mouth. This was the power of the cultivation of the soul, combined with the power of qi, refining, and body refining. Then, Lin Sun punched out with boundless fist power, and the chest of the woman in purple who had sneaked up on him collapsed. She let out a shrill scream and staggered backward. This was the power of the cultivation of qi refining and the power of soul refining and body refining. For a moment, Lin Sun was alone in the battlefield, gathering all the insights in his heart into fighting and conquering. His figure was like a flash of lightning, whistling between heaven and earth. He was unstoppable and could no longer be suppressed like before. On the contrary, because of his charge, the encirclement in the battlefield was in chaos. Cries of anger, surprise, and disbelief rang out one after another. The top saints all looked as if they had seen a ghost, their faces livid and ugly. How was this possible? They couldn't figure out why this was happening no matter how they racked their brains. Damn it! Bai Jinxiong gnashed her teeth on the city wall, and the veins on her forehead were bulging with hatred. In the city of Dao protectors, the voices of excitement, expectation, and excitement stopped abruptly and were replaced by surprise, confusion, and disbelief. A total of 17 top saints couldn't kill a two-legged sheep from the ancient desolation realm. Only Ruo Wu was laughing. She could see that Lin Sun's combat strength was transforming at an astonishing speed. He was getting stronger and more terrifying. The eighth one. Suddenly, Lin Sun's emotionless voice rang out in the battlefield. Boom! As soon as he finished speaking, a top saint in front of him was cut in half by a broken blade. After his body was split apart, it was directly swept away by the terrifying light and turned into ashes. Exclamations rang out in the battlefield. This was the first top saint to be killed since the start of the battle. But after careful calculation, this was indeed the seventh top saint to be killed, including Lu Tianheng, Shi Biyun, and He Qingyin, who had died in Lin Sun's hands. In the sky, the familiar sound of saint death rang out again. Bai Jinxiong was in a trance. Again, how could this be? Why? Countless people in the city of Dao protectors went silent like cicadas in the winter, and they had unsightly expressions on their faces. The sound of saint perishing was like resounding slap after slap on their faces, and it caused them to feel aggrieved, humiliated, and furious. On the other hand, on the battlefield, the expressions of Lai Yu and the others had already changed from their initial rage to seriousness, surprise, and bewilderment. No one dared to be careless. As if they were stimulated by death, each of them began to put their lives on the line, displaying everything they had learned to the fullest. The eighth. Lin Sun's voice sounded again. Bang! The man with the halberd was killed by the 3,000 Taishian sword chi. His body was reduced to dust, and he could only let out an unwilling scream before he died. This caused many people's expressions to change. The city of Dao protectors was deathly silent. Even Bai Jinxiong, who stood at the top of the city, had an extremely gloomy expression on her face, and she remained silent. The ninth. Not long after, another person died. It was the woman in a purple dress. She was killed by Lin Sun's Tower of Endless Ways, and her blood sprayed the sky. The shadow of death and the bloody atmosphere enveloped the world, causing Lai Yu and the others to have difficulty breathing. But they were still unwilling to give up. Or perhaps it could be said that their eyes had turned red from the slaughter, and their hearts were filled with rage. They become even more frenzied while their attacks grew even more violent. However, Lin Sun had a calm and composed expression from the beginning until the end. His figure flickered as he moved about the battlefield, and every single move he made carried the might to crush the world and annihilate the gods. As the slaughter progressed, the inspiration in his heart grew more and more numerous, and his understanding of the three Taoists as one grew deeper and deeper. In the end, he'd even forgotten himself, forgotten the heavens and the earth, and forgotten the battlefield. All his attacks were instinctive actions, and all his attacks revealed a natural aura. On the other hand, peak saints were annihilated one after another on the battlefield. Some were killed by Duan Run. Some were crushed by the Tower of Endless Ways. Some were crushed by Lin Sun's fist energy and sword chi. Shrill cries, howls, wails, and shrill and unwilling screams mixed with the dense aura of blood and death painted this area of the heavens and the earth into a purgatory. Terror and death became the background of the painting. In the sky, the blood-red light flowed and covered thousands of miles. The morning sound of saints dying lingered for a long time, resounding throughout the world. There was a dead silence in the city of Tao protectors. On the top of the city wall, Bai Jianxiong's eyes were blank, her mind blank, and her hands trembled uncontrollably. This battle was too bloody and cruel. Every death of a peak saint was like a heavy hammer to the camp of the blood demon ancient realm, making them tremble, depressed, and suffer an incomparable mental impact. This was the blood demon world. This was the base camp of their blood demon ancient realm. But now a young man from the ancient desolation realm had raised the butcher's knife and killed a peak saint here, setting off a bloody scene. His unparalleled posture and domineering power were simply despairing. Even Ruo Wu had never expected that a battle that was disadvantageous to Lin Sun would be reversed to such an extent. Looking at Lin Sun's figure and his invincible and peerless demeanor, Ruo Wu's mind also suffered a great impact. She knew that this scene was destined to be unforgettable for the rest of her life. On the battlefield, there were peak saints who could not bear such a blow and fled in panic, but they were killed by Lin Sun halfway. There were also people who roared with anger. Bai Jianxiong, are you just going to watch us suffer? This caused Bai Jianxiong, who had fallen into a daze, to shiver all over and suddenly wake up. Then she saw that there were only 6 peak saints left on the battlefield, struggling to hold on. The other 11 peak saints had all been killed. Bai Jianxiong felt her mind buzz as if she had been struck by lightning, and she felt dizzy. How is this possible? There were a total of 17 peak saints, but now only 6 were left? This was too great a blow. Even with Bai Jianxiong's state of mind, she almost could not bear it. Her vision turned black, and her heart trembled. She did not dare to imagine that this was all caused by a single person. Bai Jianxiong, are you really going to watch us die? Angry roars resounded from the battlefield again, causing Bai Jianxiong's body to tremble again. She took a deep breath and looked around. Currently, there were more than 10 peak saints in the city of Tao protectors, but if they were sent to help, what if they met with another disaster? If that happened, the losses would become more and more serious. Moreover, if she did not have these people with her to guard the city of Tao protectors, what if Lin Sun killed his way here? For a moment, Bai Jianxiong was anxious and conflicted. She was so sad that she almost vomited blood. In the past, they had not taken the ancient desolation seriously. Who would dare to believe that such a peerless and ruthless person had appeared in the Battle of the 9 Regions? The most terrifying thing was that the other party was alone, but he had killed his way through the blood demon world and set off endless carnage. And now, he had killed so many peak saints within 1,000 miles of the city of Tao protectors that they could not resist. Who would dare to believe that? Run, run. Suddenly, a roar resounded from the battlefield. The remaining 6 peak saints were all panic-stricken and fled in all directions, as if they had been scared out of their wits. Lin Sun woke up from his various comprehensions. He looked around and saw that only 6 peak saints were fleeing in the vast battlefield. Their faces were filled with shock, anger, fear, and despair. Some were fleeing toward the city of Tao protectors, while others were fleeing far away. They were panic-stricken like stray dogs. Can you escape? Lin Sun's mind moved, and all kinds of cultivation and secret methods were released to the extreme at this moment. Boundless, indomitable strike. Impermanence slash. 9 transformations of Calamity Dragon. 9 strikes of Shaking Heaven. Taishian Sword Chi. In an instant, boundless finger power, dazzling sharpness, impassioned dragon roars, and primitive fist power filled the world. In the void, Lin Sun's black hair fluttered in the wind. His body was so dazzling that it seemed illusory. It was as if he had turned into the sole ruler, and his power had reached its peak in an instant. Bang! 300 miles away, the void was crushed by the terrifying finger power. A peak saint screamed and staggered out, dying on the spot. Puff! Under the cover of the dazzling and boundless sharpness, a peerless saint was beheaded. In addition, the other peak saints who were fleeing in other directions were killed one after another. Their bodies exploded and blood rained down. Hiss in the distance, Ruo Wu gasped. Killing a peak saint like slaughtering a chicken was nothing more than this. Could it be that Lin Sun had mastered the invincible method of this realm? On the other hand, the city of Tao protectors was deathly silent, perfectly silent. Even Bai Jianxiong was trembling all over, and her eyes were in a trance. She murmured, "How is this possible? How is this possible? Bai Jianxiong, are you really going to watch us being killed?" Only Lai Yu was left, and he had already rushed to the city of Tao protectors. His face was livid, and his eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. He was extremely angry. Bai Jianxiong was about to say something. At this moment, an arrow suddenly burst out, piercing through Lai Yu's body and nailing him to the city wall. Bai Jianxiong was so shocked that her soul almost came out of her body. In the distance, Lin Sun was holding a spiritual bow made of white bones. His tall body stood in the void, like an immortal or a demon. In the battlefield, all the peak saints had been killed. The vast sky had turned into a dazzling color of blood, and the mourning of the saints resounded. The world was mourning. Looking around, the vast wilderness was full of desolation. Countless mountains had been flattened, and countless rivers had evaporated. The earth was full of shocking ravines and cracks. Whoosh! The cold wind whistled between heaven and earth, but could not blow away the murderous and bloody smell in the battlefield. From the death of Lu Tianheng, Shi Biyun, and He Qingyin until now, a total of 24 peak saints have been killed in this battle. Every one of them could be called a dominator in the 9 regions battlefield, and they were the core forces of the blood demon ancient realm and other realms. But now all of them have been killed. Moreover, they had died in front of their lair, under the gaze of countless experts of the blood demon ancient realm. And all of this was caused by Lin Sun alone. Chapter 1552. The bodies of countless people in the city of Tao protectors stiffened while great terror drowned their hearts. Is he even human? How could there be such a terrifying sage in the world? Bai Jianxiong and the remaining sages were trembling. They couldn't calm down at all. This was the blood demon circle, their territory. But Lin Sun had killed a group of top sages here and set off a monstrous bloodshed. This was no longer as simple as a slap in the face and a great humiliation. Just this loss alone was enough to shake the foundation of the blood demon ancient region in a 9 regions battlefield. He's here. A cry of surprise rang out from the top of the city wall. Bai Jianxiong raised her head and saw a figure walking through the void in the distance. The figure was surrounded by a blazing Tao light, like a god patrolling the world. Lin Sun. Could he be thinking of? Bai Jianxiong's body stiffened and her eyes widened. He's going to kill his way into our city of Tao protectors. This was crazy. If Lin Sun really did kill his way into the city of Tao protectors, the blood demon ancient region's face would be completely trampled under his feet. They would never be able to raise their heads again, even if they went to compete with other territories in the future. Quick, prepare to activate the Tao Protection Sacred Formation. Bai Jinxiong roared. The group of sages beside her didn't hesitate and rushed to different areas of the city. In the 9 regions battlefield, every city of Tao protectors represented the foundation of a territory, and it was related to the survival of the territory. Lin Sun walked over from afar and soon arrived at a place 100 feet away from the city gate. He placed his hands behind his back and raised his head slightly. His powerful divine sense swept out and covered the entire city in an instant. The 4 city walls were towering and stretched for 1,000 miles. They were extremely majestic, but in Lin Sun's eyes, all he saw was blood and brutality. The city walls were covered in a thick blood color. One could see piles of bones piled up on the walls, densely packed and innumerable. Lin Sun recalled some of the things he learned when he came to the 9 regions battlefield. In the 9 regions battlefield, the other 8 cities of Tao protectors were built from the blood and bones of the ancient desolation sages. Even in death, they couldn't rest in peace. They were used as materials to build the city, and their enemies saw them as symbols of glory and victory. At first, Lin Sun didn't believe it, but now he wished it wasn't true. Piles of bones and mottled blood had formed a barrier around the enemy. Such methods weren't just brutal. They were simply devoid of conscience. Lin Sun was a man who had gone through mountains of corpses and seas of blood and experienced countless killings. But when he saw such a scene, an uncontrollable anger suddenly arose in his heart. Suddenly, a strange and grand fluctuation swept out from the enormous city and shot into the 9 heavens. Dense Tao patterns flowed up and down the entire city like a tide, revealing an oppressive and terrifying restrictive power. Tao Protection Sacred Array. Lin Sun squinted his eyes and looked at it carefully. After that, he frowned. The formations that covered the city were extremely complicated. They were formed from over 1,000 restrictions, and they transformed into a large-scale formation that seemed as if it was formed by nature. It was not impossible for Lin Sun to destroy it, but it would take him at least half a month to completely dismantle it. Obviously, the city of Tao Protectors was an important place at the core of the Blood Devil ancient region, and it was covered in the strictest of restrictions. Little bastard, why don't you dare to come forward? Suddenly, Bai Jinxiong shouted with a ferocious expression. At this moment, he had regained his composure because the sacred array had been activated. Even a peerless saint would be killed if he tried to force his way in. What a joke. We've slaughtered our way here, and no one can stop us. How dare an old thing like you act so arrogantly? Don't you feel ashamed? Ruo Wu had approached without anyone knowing, and she didn't hide her disdain at all. Bai Jinxiong's expression froze, and she said with a gloomy expression, "Don't be so sharp-tongued. Let me ask you, do you dare to step into the city? Let me ask you as well. The Blood Devil world is so vast, but no one dares to step out of the city to fight?" Ruo Wu said coldly. Bai Jinxiong was so angry that she laughed. She said, "You can continue to act arrogantly. When Xue Qingyi and the others return, it will be the day of your death." Ruo Wu said indifferently, "Let me ask you again, who dares to come out and fight?" Her voice suddenly resounded through the sky and covered the entire city of Tao Protectors. Countless experts of the Blood Devil ancient region hiding in the city heard it. For a moment, everyone felt extremely humiliated, and they felt extremely sullen. The feeling of being blocked in front of one's own gate and shouting was too torturous. But no matter who it was, no one dared to leave the city without permission. Even Bai Jinxiong was stunned by the question. Her face turned ashen, and she gritted her teeth so hard that they almost broke. Was it humiliating? It was indeed humiliating. They could only hide in their nest after being attacked. This was a complete disgrace to the Blood Devil ancient region. But Bai Jinxiong didn't dare to act rashly. She was truly terrified by Lin Sun's slaughter. Now, she could only hope that Xue Qingyi and the others would return as soon as possible, so that they could kill Lin Sun as soon as possible and wash away the humiliation. Lin Sun kept silent. After a long time, he took a deep breath and suppressed the boiling, killing intent in his heart. He said word by word, "When the next time comes, I will slaughter the entire city." After saying that, he turned around and left. Ruo Wu was stunned. She had mixed feelings. She knew that although Lin Sun had won the previous battles, he wasn't happy. The reason was because of the city that was built with the corpses and blood of countless ancestors of the ancient desolation region. Lin Sun left. He didn't turn back. Perhaps he was worried that he wouldn't be able to control the killing intent in his heart if he turned back. Ruo Wu didn't know, but she knew that when the next time he came, this city would be completely slaughtered. He's finally gone. Bai Jianxiong's body swayed as she watched Lin Sun and the others disappear. She fell to the ground as if she had lost all her strength. She was in a daze. The Blood Devil ancient region had suffered innumerable casualties in this battle, and they had lost all their face. Bai Jianxiong didn't know how to explain when Xue Qingyi and the others returned. Lin Sun and Ruo Wu walked side by side in the boundless world. "Lin Sun, are you all right?" Lin Sun kept silent along the way, which made Ruo Wu a little worried. Lin Sun said casually, "It's just a bunch of old beasts. It's not enough to injure me. But after this bloody battle, I did comprehend some of the mysteries of creating my own method." Ruo Wu couldn't help but say, "I'm not asking about that, but..." Lin Sun smiled and patted Ruo Wu's shoulder. "That city did make me very angry, but it's not enough to affect my state of mind." After a pause, he continued, "Not to mention that the 9 regions battlefield has only been open for less than half a year. In the future, I will destroy all the city of Dao protectors one by one." At the same time, he said in his heart, "More importantly, I have to take away the blood and bones of my ancestors and bury them in peace." Ruo Wu heaved a sigh of relief and said, "That's good. Where do you plan to go next?" Lin Sun said without hesitation, "I'll go to the underground palace first, then leave the Blood Devil ancient region and go to the ancient wasteland." "The ancient wasteland?" Ruo Wu's starry eyes narrowed. "That's the territory of the ancient wasteland. Although it's very likely that it's already occupied by the forces of the other 8 regions, it's still our territory after all. How can we not take it back?" Lin Sun said indifferently, "Moreover, I want to build a city of Dao protectors so that the experts of the ancient wasteland can have a place to stay." Ruo Wu was shocked. What was the difference between such boldness and the safety of thousands of buildings and the happiness of the poor? "I'll go with you." Ruo Wu's starry eyes brightened with determination. Lin Sun smiled. "You're more than welcome." In the depths of the divine, refining forest, Lin Sun and Ruo Wu returned smoothly without any obstacles. Under the guidance of the demonic crack butterfly, they entered the underground palace. Ruo Wu began to gather the experts of the ancient wasteland who were settled here. Lin Sun, on the other hand, walked to the front of the green god refining ancestral tree. Whoosh, just by approaching it, the branches and leaves of the tree shook violently, as if it was startled. Lin Sun's heart skipped a beat, and he said, "I'll give you a choice. Either you come with me, or I'll kill you myself." The tree was silent and did not move an inch. Clang! Lin Sun took out the white bone saber. At this moment, the divine refining ancestral tree finally moved. A pair of eyes formed from dense tree patterns appeared on its trunk, and they were filled with anger. At the same time, an angry shout resounded in Lin Sun's ears. "Didn't you say that you'll repay me in the future? Is this how you repay me?" Lin Sun put away the white bone blade and said thoughtfully, "As expected, you already have spirituality and wisdom. How about it? Do you want to come with me? You've just become a saint, and you're already so arrogant. You even want to take me away. Kid, do you think you're worthy?" The god-refining ancestral tree sneered. Lin Sun flipped his palm, and the white bone blade appeared again. Immediately, the god-refining ancestral tree became anxious and shouted, "Kid, aren't you afraid of being struck by lightning for threatening the old? Even the sky-splitting emperor wasn't as ruthless as you." Chapter 1553. Sky-splitting emperor. Lin Sun raised his eyebrows. His gaze swept across this strange underground palace secret realm, and thought to himself, could this be the work of a great emperor? Thinking about the layer of void saint beast bones that had its power absorbed by the demonic crack butterfly, to be able to kill such a terrifying monster of the quasi-emperor level, only a great emperor could do it. The divine refining ancestral tree said, "You guessed correctly. This place was left behind by the sky-splitting emperor. Back then, in order to hunt that void saint beast, when he was crossing the void, he accidentally broke into this place and was trapped here for 10 years before escaping." Lin Sun's black eyes narrowed. A great emperor was trapped here? The divine refining ancestral tree said in surprise. Don't you know that the laws of heaven and earth in the 9 regions battlefield are enough to suppress all existences above the true saint realm? Lin Sun replied with a no, then suddenly understood and said, "Tell me about your origins." The divine refining ancestral tree sighed. The past is unbearable to look back on. Back then, I traveled with the sky-splitting emperor, crossing the void and galloping across the world. How glorious it was, but unexpectedly, we were trapped here. When the sky-splitting emperor left, he originally planned to bring me along, but being trapped by the power of the rules, in the end, he could only leave first. After a pause, he continued, "Of course, when the sky-splitting emperor left, he promised that he would definitely come and pick me up in the future." Lin Sun sneered, "If you continue to spout nonsense, don't blame me for being impolite. It was just a divine refining ancestral tree, yet it dared to clamor to appear with a great emperor. It was obviously nonsense." The divine refining ancestral tree said angrily. "You don't believe me?" Lin Sun was already too lazy to talk nonsense and directly said, "Make a decision. Do you want to leave with me?" The divine refining ancestral tree was silent for a long time before saying, "You want to take me away? It's nothing more than to refine the ancestral source and use it to nurture your life saint weapon. I can promise you, but you must promise to help me find a treasure." "What treasure?" "Chaotic life soil." Hearing this, Lin Sun almost stabbed the tree with his blade. This was simply asking for too much. Chaotic life soil, this was a legendary treasure. Lin Sun even doubted if there was such a treasure in this world. "Young man, don't be impulsive. If you don't have chaotic life soil, then the 5-color soil will do." The divine refining ancestral tree hurriedly said. Lin Sun was expressionless, but the corners of his mouth twitched imperceptibly. The 5-colored wonderful soil was a magical treasure that gathered the origin of the 5 elements. It was said that it could only be found in the Kunlun ruins. This is still not enough? Forget it. I will take another step back. How about the clear and turbid star soul sand? Still not enough? How about Tai Chi water? If this still doesn't work, then I have no other way. The god refining ancestral tree continued to ramble. Lin Sun's answer was simple. He picked up the bone saber and began to count. Without waiting for the count of 3, the divine refinement ancestral tree shouted, "All right, I'll go with you." Crash, its figure shook, and then it suddenly transformed into a lush green branch that emanated an extremely gorgeous glow of the Tao. It was an extremely miraculous sight. However, as if it was unwilling to accept the outcome, it yelled, "Even the heaven-shattering great monarch wasn't as ruthless as you. I'll remember you." Lin Sun said, "Don't worry. If there is a chance in the future, I promise to find the treasure you want." "That's what you said. You can't lie to me like last time." The god refining ancestral tree shouted. Lin Sun put it away and directly threw it into the Great Way without end tower. At this time, Ruo Wu had already kept the experts of the ancient desolation realm into a treasure and walked over. Where's that tree?" she asked curiously. Lin Sun smiled and said, "I uprooted it. Although this divine tree is a bit long-winded, it is a good treasure to refine a life saint weapon. If you need it in the future, you can come and find me." Ruo Wu was startled. "I see." Before leaving, Lin Sun looked around the mysterious secret realm again. Killing Heart House, Extreme Tao Pavilion, Zhenyuan Tower, Seeking Truth Pavilion. The buildings looked simple, but but in fact they all had great mysteries. Unfortunately, these mysteries could not be forced. They could only be unintentionally triggered, and then all kinds of trials and tribulations would descend. In the future, I have to carefully interrogate the God-refining ancestral tree and find out what kind of person the sky-shattering great monarch is. Lin Sun murmured in his heart. Without any delay, on the same day, the two brought little silver and the sky-splitting demonic butterfly out of the secret realm. It was also on the same day that the news about Lin Sun's massacre swept across the entire Blood Demon realm like a hurricane. For a time, all the forces stationed in the major border areas of the Blood Demon realm were shocked and stirred up a great uproar. One person killed a group of peerless saints in front of the city of Tao Protectors. One person besieged an entire city. Since the last two battles of the 9 regions, one had such a bloody and terrible thing happened. What embarrassed the experts of the Blood Demon Ancient Realm the most was that it was all done by a young man from the Ancient Desolation Realm. A 2-legged sheep killed dozens of peerless saints? It is said that he alone blocked the city of Tao Protectors, and no one dared to fight him. How is this possible? Shame. A great shame. Countless people were in an uproar. The news was so shocking that it could not be hidden at all. Later on, the news spread out from the Blood Demon realm at an astonishing speed. The Daluo realm, the Absolute Een realm, the Ninely realm, the North Underworld realm. In the vast areas of the 9 regions battlefield, the forces of each realm quickly received the news. Lin Sun, a young man from the Ancient Desolation realm, killed so many people in the Blood Demon realm? That's impossible, right? The first reaction of many experts was that they could not believe it. It should be known that the Ancient Desolation realm had been weak for a long time, and the experts of the other 8 regions did not take it seriously at all. Who would dare to believe that such a peerless and ruthless person would appear in such a declining realm? If this is true, it proves that Lin Sun is not just a simple person who has become a saint. Moreover, his combat strength is extraordinary. Otherwise, how could he kill dozens of peerless saints alone? Doesn't this mean that Lin Sun already has the strength to compete with the 8 absolutes of green darkness? Find out what kind of person Lin Sun is. Countless voices of discussion sounded in the 9 regions battlefield. Such a bloody battle record was so shocking that no one could ignore it. At the same time, Lin Sun's ferocity and coldness also shocked many experts from the major realms. How terrifying was it that he alone killed his way to the city of Tao Protectors of the Blood Demon realm and forced no one to fight him? The Blood Demon Ancient Realm actually suffered such a big loss at the hands of a 2-legged sheep. How embarrassing. Well, I really want to know how Shui Qingyu would feel if he knew about this. This time, the Blood Demon Ancient Realm has indeed lost face. However, Lin Sun has also completely offended the Blood Demon Ancient Realm. They are destined to be destroyed in the future. There were also many people who were gloating. Although the 8 regions were allies, that was only for the Ancient Desolation Realm. After the Ancient Desolation Realm was destroyed, the 8 regions would also compete for hegemony. In short, they would kill the Ancient Desolation Realm first, then compete for the top. However, the experts of the Ancient Desolation Realm, who were scattered in different areas of the 9 regions battlefield, had a different reaction when they heard the news. Lin Sun, he has become a saint. Some people were shocked. That's great. Someone has finally stood up for us. Some people were so excited that their eyes were brimming with tears. In less than half a year, countless experts of the Ancient Desolation Realm who were scattered in different areas of the 9 regions battlefield had been slaughtered. The enemies of the 8 regions all regarded them as 2-legged sheep and launched a purge. Anyone who was discovered, no matter who it was, could escape death. Under the shroud of such a terrifying atmosphere, countless experts of the Ancient Desolation Realm began to despair. But now, Lin Sun had jumped out and set off a bloody storm in the Blood Demon realm. He alone had suppressed an entire city. How could they not be excited and inspired? Awesome. I knew that Lin Sun wouldn't let us down. As long as he is in the 9 regions battlefield, the Ancient Desolation realm will have hope. Many people shouted, "Senior brother, did you hear that? Lin's son has become a saint and killed so many people that they are terrified." There are also people crying with tears streaming down their faces. Over the past few days, bloody battles had broken out in various areas of the Nine Regions battlefield. Countless experts of the ancient Desolation realm had already passed away. It was destined that they would not be able to hear such exciting news. In short, Lin Sun's battle had shaken the entire Nine Regions battlefield. The enemies of the Eight Regions were shocked and firmly remembered Lin Sun's name. The ancient Desolation realm. It was located in the heart of the Nine Regions battlefield. Originally, it should have been the territory of the ancient Desolation realm. However, after the previous two defeats in the Nine Regions battle, it had long become a territory that the other 8 regions could divide at will. For example, when the experts of the ancient Desolation realm entered the Nine Regions battlefield, they immediately chose to leave the ancient Desolation realm. On the one hand, it was very clear that the ancient Desolation realm's current strength was still far from that of the other 8 regions. On the other hand, it was too dangerous to stay here. They would be besieged by the experts of the other 8 regions. For the experts of the ancient Desolation realm, the most important thing was to survive. When Lin Sun arrived at the ancient Desolation realm, it was already more than 10 days later. It was not a peaceful journey. Almost everywhere he went, he would encounter the enemies of the other 8 regions. They came in groups and were aggressive. However, when they encountered Lin Sun and the others, they were all wiped out. On the way, Lin Sun had already received the news that the Juyu secret land had come to an end. In this competition for the opportunity to become a saint, at least 1/10 of the peerless figures from the other 8 regions had set foot in the peerless saint realm. This number was undoubtedly shocking. It was a pity that Lin Sun didn't know much about it. The only thing he knew was that the 8 peerless figures known as the 8 Invincibles of Green Darkness had all risen to the top of the peerless saint realm. In the final analysis, the ancient Desolation realm is too weak. Even if they fight for the opportunity, they will be blocked and suppressed by others. They don't have much strength to compete at all. Lin Sun sighed softly. At this moment, he was standing on the bank of a vast black sea. The 10th update is here. Finished. Aside from the topic, I don't like to be criticized for not having enough content when I have a good update, and being criticized for slow updates when I don't have good update. At least, in terms of writing attitude, Goldfish was doing her best. Chapter 1554. In the second battle of the Nine Regions, the situation of the ancient Desolation realm was even worse than ours now. At that time, there was not even a peerless saint. No matter where the experts of the ancient Desolation realm went, they would be killed and harvested. Hearing Lin Sun's sigh, Rual Wu took a deep breath and said with a smile, "And I believe that the ancient Desolation realm is destined to get better and better in this battle of the Nine Regions." Lin Sun nodded and said, "It's true. After all, in the past years, countless sages have made great efforts to prepare an unprecedented era for us, so that we have the opportunity to set foot in the peerless saint realm. This battle of the Nine Regions is destined to be different from the past." While they were talking, a battle broke out not far from them. Little Silver and the demonic crack butterfly were fighting a group of experts from the ancient Een realm, and the battle was intense, because there were several saints among the enemies. The strength of these two little guys is really amazing. They are able to compete with saints before they become saints. Ruawu looked at Lin Sun. "I wonder if they will be as abnormal as you when they set foot in the peerless saint realm." Abnormal? Lin Sun was speechless and said, "One of them is the descendant of spirit-eating insect, and the other is the descendant of sky-splitting butterfly. Both their talent and bloodline power are unprecedented. It's normal for them to have such combat power, right?" Ruawu said with a smile. "Of course. By the way, when are you going to find an opportunity for them to become saints?" Lin Sun thought for a while and said, "I'm afraid we have to wait for a while. I remember that a year later, there will be another worldlet similar to the prison secret realm. At that time, I will take Little Silver and the others there to escort them." "Magnetic secret land?" Rual Wu remembered it instantly. Yes, this secret land will also appear in the ancient Desolation realm. Lin Sun nodded. At that time, as long as the peerless cultivators in the ancient Desolation realm have the possibility of becoming saints, I will help them and protect them. Rual Wu's eyes were flowing with magnificent splendor. But you should also know that once the magnetic secret land appears, it will be targeted by the other 8 regions. Lin Sun smiled, but there was a cold light surging in his black eyes. If they dare to fight for it, they should ask me first. Rual Wu was startled. Why do I feel that you're looking forward to their arrival? Lin Sun raised his thumb and praised. Your intuition is very accurate. I intend to rebuild the city of Tao protectors in the ancient wasteland world, so I'll definitely need a huge amount of materials. I think that the corpses and blood of the enemies of the 8 regions are very suitable. It seemed like he was joking, but Rual Wu was extremely shocked. She realized that Lin Sun had obviously been provoked by the city of Tao protectors of the Blood Devil world and wanted to return blood with blood. When the time comes, I'll help you gather the materials. Rual Wu said firmly. It couldn't be better, Lin Sun said with a smile. As he spoke, he flicked his sleeve. Rumble. Clear radiance that covered the sky swept out and enveloped the nearby battlefield. Instantly, all the enemies of the ancient Yin realm who were fighting fiercely with Little Silver and the others were instantly turned into corpses. Little Silver and Little Tian were already riddled with injuries. After all, they were fighting against several true saints, and the 2 of them had yet to become saints. It was already extremely difficult for them to fight until now. Moreover, the shocking thing was that a true saint was killed by the joint attack of the 2 of them. Lin Sun's timing was just right. Otherwise, if the battle continued, Little Silver and the others would definitely be unable to hold on. This was training. The reason why Lin Sun didn't intervene before was because he wanted Little Silver and the others to use the hands of the enemies to temper themselves. Little Silver, Little Tian, let's go. Lin Sun called out. Master, where to? Little Silver flew over and stood on Lin Sun's shoulder. The demonic cracked butterfly stood on Little Silver's shoulder, and they complemented each other very well. The ruins of the city of Tao protectors. Lin Sun said, during the first battle of the 9 regions, there was a city of Tao protectors in the ancient wasteland world, but it was later destroyed by the joint forces of the 8 regions. When the second battle of the 9 regions began, the city of Tao protectors was rebuilt, but it was destroyed halfway. The reason why Lin Sun came to the ancient wasteland world this time was to rebuild the city of Tao protectors that belonged to the ancient wasteland realm. Of course, building a city was definitely a huge project. It wasn't as simple as piling up walls and building a city. It also required the sacred protective formation and the materials needed to build the city. If they only used ordinary materials, they wouldn't be able to withstand the attack of any saint. Let's go. Without any delay, Lin Sun and the others set off. Along the way, they had already found out that the ruins of the city of Tao protectors were located in the most central area of the ancient wasteland world. However, Lin Sun and the others didn't have a smooth journey. Compared to the Blood Demon world, there were traces of enemies everywhere in the ancient wasteland world, and all of them came from the other 8 regions. They saw the ancient wasteland world as a land without a master, so they wantonly invaded and hunted down the experts of the ancient wasteland realm, as if they were going to kill every last one of them. Kill the ancient wasteland realm first, then fight for the top. This sentence wasn't as simple as it sounded. Look, that shameless couple dares to swagger out here. They really don't know what's good for them. Ha, the ancient wasteland world has been wiped out countless times during this period of time. I didn't expect to meet a fish that slipped through the net. Kill. In the distance, a group of experts from the Heaven Fire ancient realm appeared, led by 3 true saints. They were aggressive and murderous. Every single one of them was fearless and had cruel expressions on their faces. This was the ancient wasteland realm, the camp of the ancient wasteland realm. But now, the experts of the ancient wasteland realm were being wiped out, and the enemies from the other 8 regions were acting like the masters. Are these materials feasible? Rual Wu's eyes were cold. Too bad. They can only be used as scraps. Lin Sun looked indifferent. Then, the two of them moved together. At that moment, it was like two rulers of the world. In just a breath's time, the invading enemies were all lying on the ground. Ruo Wu said bitterly, "If they weren't valuable materials for building the city, I would have crushed their bones and scattered their ashes. There will be many opportunities in the future. Don't be in a hurry." Lin Sun waved his sleeves and put the corpses and blood into a specially prepared material bag. In this way, they moved forward, killing all the way, leaving a trail of blood. 15 minutes later, Ruo Wu frowned. "Why haven't I met a peerless saint until now?" Lin Sun thought for a while and asked Little Silver to extract the memories of the enemy's souls. Soon he learned something. As it turned out, as the Absolute Prison Secret Domain came to an end, most of the top sages that were scattered across the ancient wasteland world had taken on the role of guards, escorting the experts that belonged to their own camp back to their own lair. Most of the enemies from the other 8 regions who were still in the ancient wasteland world were longevity tribulation kings and ordinary true saints. However, there were also some peerless saints who didn't leave. They personally took action to capture the peerless figures in the ancient wasteland realm. For the enemies from the other 8 regions, if they wanted to destroy the ancient wasteland realm, the most important thing was to wipe out all the peerless figures in the ancient wasteland realm first. In this way, it was tantamount to destroying the core strength of the ancient wasteland realm. After understanding this, Ruo Wu couldn't help laughing angrily. What a cruel method! Once the peerless figures in the ancient wasteland realm die, we naturally won't have the power to compete with them in the future. What? Suddenly, Lin Sun's heart moved. He turned over his palm, and a jade talisman emerged, emitting strange waves. Spirit-locking talisman. On the first day he stepped in the 9-region battlefield, Lin Sun took out the spirit-locking talisman and tried to meet Zhao Jingxian, Old Toad, Alu, and the Big Blackbird. However, at that time, he was moved to the Blood Demon realm, and the spirit-locking talisman lost its connection. Now, the spirit-locking talisman finally changed. Lin Sun fixed his eyes on it and immediately judged that the aura of Old Toad and Alu appeared together in the northwest, 13,000 miles away. But when Lin Sun tried to contact them with the spirit-locking talisman, these waves immediately quieted down and disappeared. They are very likely to be in trouble. Lin Sun frowned. "Let's go and have a look together." Ruo Wu saw all this and naturally knew what Lin Sun was worried about. Okay. Lin Sun didn't talk nonsense anymore. He directly changed his route and rushed to the northwest. Moreover, Lin Sun moved at full speed without any delay. Even if they encountered some enemies from the 8 regions, they would usually be killed before they could even react. It was a clean and straightforward method. But soon, Lin Sun's black eyes narrowed. On the way ahead, he sensed the aura of a peerless saint. What? It was a vast and boundless desert that was covered in golden sand and suffused with a dazzling light. At this time, on the edge of the desert, a golden-armored man with a pair of black wings on his back, surrounded by terrible blood-red lightning, suddenly raised his head and sensed the approaching aura of Lin Sun and his companions. 2 peerless saints, our fellow practitioners from other regions, also coming to hunt down the peerless saint named Xiaohao. The golden-armored man was surprised. Now, this desert area had already been heavily blocked. Many saints from the 8 regions had gathered here, and some peerless saints were also attacking. Their purpose was to besiege and kill a leader of the ancient desolation realm named Xiaohao. No! Immediately, the golden-armored man's face suddenly changed. He sensed the aura of Lin Sun and Ruo Wu, who clearly belonged to the ancient desolation realm. They are here to rescue Xiaohao. The golden-armored man was shocked. Immediately, a monstrous killing intent burst out from his body, soaring into the sky and stirring up the wind and clouds. On the other hand, a blood-red plume feather had appeared in his hand, and it was suffused with strange fluctuations of the Tao. This was a messenger feather, which was also an early warning device similar to the beacon tower. As long as it was sent out, others in the nearby area would know what was happening here. Lin Sun and Ruo Wu came at full speed without covering up the aura of a peerless saint, so that the golden-armored man instantly realized that something was wrong and planned to send a message. In less than 3 hours, the year-end inventory will be over. Guys, if you still have free tickets, please throw them to the chosen ones. Remember, it's the best word for boys. Now, the competition is fierce, and our second place is also under attack. Please help us. Chapter 1555. The golden-armored man's name was Tua Hungu. He came from the black-winged thunder clan of the Star-Fiend ancient region and was a peerless saint himself. When he sensed that something was wrong, he crushed the communication feather in his palm without hesitation. Swoosh! But to his surprise, a strand of sword chi had already slashed over from afar before his enemy's figure could arrive, and the peerlessly fierce sword insight slashed space into two. So powerful, Tua Hunga's heart trembled. He didn't have time to crush the communication feather and teleported to the side without hesitation. Boom! The sword chi created a 1,000-foot-long ravine where he was standing. The sword chi filled the air and shattered the rocks nearby. When did such a peerless saint appear in the ancient desolation realm? Tua Hungu's eyes flickered with shock. The power of that sword strike made him feel a bone-piercing sense of danger. But before he could think any further, rays of sword chi whistled through the air. They crisscrossed and struck towards him like a dense cloud of lightning. Every single sword strike carried the might to slaughter mountains and rivers and cleanse the world. Tua Hunga's expression finally changed. He decided to flee without hesitation. The enemy didn't just have two peerless saints. Their battle strength was so terrifying that he didn't dare to face them head-on. Die! But as soon as Tua Hungu turned around, an indifferent voice resounded in his ears. Buzz! Along with it was a broken blade that shone like a river of stars. Just the aura of the saint path that flowed from the blade was as vast as the ocean. This, Tua Hungu's scalp went numb. He let out a loud roar and circulated all the power in his body to the limit. The golden armor on his body suddenly emitted layers of lightning runes, dense and dazzling. A blood-red cauldron appeared in his right hand and smashed towards the broken blade. Bang! In an instant, the blood-red cauldron was sent flying. Tua Hungu coughed up blood. He couldn't believe it. He was also a peerless saint, but under such an attack, he felt powerless and weak. How was this possible? Where did this guy come from? Before Tua Hungu could react, the broken blade didn't slow down at all and collided with the lightning runes on the golden armor. Bang! Bang, bang, bang. The deafening sound of the collision resounded like a clap of thunder. Tua Hungu felt as if he had been struck by lightning, and his body staggered backwards. Every time he took a step back, his face would turn a shade paler, and the golden lightning armor in front of him would crack. When he stood over 100 away, an explosive bang resounded. The golden armor before him seemed to be unable to endure a heavy burden, and it directly shattered into pieces before transforming into a rain of light that covered the sky and scattered down. Puff! Tua Hungu could no longer restrain himself from coughing out large mouthfuls of blood. His body was twitching violently from the intense pain. Too strong. Even though the might of this strike was dispersed in the end, it blasted his cauldron flying, shattered his golden armor, and even heavily injured him. It was also at this time that Tua Hungu clearly saw the appearance of the attacker. He wore a moon-white robe, had handsome features, and his black hair fluttered in the wind. His tall figure was otherworldly like a banished immortal, but his might was like that of a fiend god. This kid, could he be? In that instant, Tua Hungu suddenly remembered a big event that shook the Nine Zones battlefield not long ago. The main character of that event was a peerless saint of the ancient desolation realm named Lin Sun. He once single-handedly slaughtered 30,000 Li, setting off a storm in the blood demon world. He once besieged an entire city by himself. Whoosh! As soon as this thought flashed through Tua Hungu's mind, Lin Sun's attack had already arrived, accompanied by a clear and impassioned cry. The broken blade was like an illusion. With unparalleled force, it cut off Tuahungu's head and threw it into the void. Even at the moment of his death, there was still a touch of astonishment on his face. Obviously, he could not understand why his opponent's combat power was so terrifying even though they were in the same realm. What's more, he could not understand why he, who was like a dominator in the Nine Zones battlefield, could be so vulnerable. Bang! The next moment, Tuahungu's head exploded, and his spirit was smashed into pieces. However, at the last moment before his death, his headless body crushed the messenger feather in his palm, and then a divine rainbow made a shrill, whistling sound and soared into the sky. This is a messenger treasure. This guy is reminding his companions. Judging from this, there must be more than one peerless saint in this area. Ruo Wu's figure floated out of the scene, and a touch of solemnity appeared in her starry eyes. Whoosh! With a wave of his sleeve, Lin Sun put away the corpse and the blood. At the same time, he gave some of Tuahungu's remaining soul fragments to Little Silver and said, "Check if this guy knows about Old Toad and Alu." Little Silver also knew that the situation was serious, so he dared not neglect it. "Master, they are surrounding Prince Xiaohao." Not long after, Little Silver cried out in surprise. Lin Sun and Ruo Wu were also stunned. How did this have anything to do with Xiaohao? Not long ago, when the Extreme Prison Secret Realm came to an end, some experts of the Ancient Desolation were threatened by the other 8 regions when they left the Extreme Prison Secret Realm. At that time, Prince Xiaohao appeared and rescued a group of experts from the Ancient Desolation. It was also at that time that Prince Xiaohao was chased by a group of peerless saints from the other 8 regions. Now, he's trapped in the depths of this desert. Then, Little Silver said quickly, "Now, this area has been sealed by the forces of the 8 regions. From this, it can be inferred that Prince Xiaohao is unable to escape." Lin Sun and Ruo Wu looked at each other and both guessed a possibility. After the Extreme Prison Secret Realm came to an end, Old Toad and Alu also appeared. They were threatened, but Prince Xiaohao appeared in time and rescued them. However, because of this, Prince Xiaohao was targeted by the other 8 regions, who regarded him as a must-kill target and chased him all the way here. Thinking of this, Lin Sun knew that the situation was not good. If Xiaohao died, the group of experts of the Ancient Desolation who were rescued by him was bound to suffer. If Old Toad and Alu were among them, there was no chance that they could survive. This guy was still here just now, which proves that their encirclement has probably not succeeded. We still have a chance. Ruo Wu analyzed calmly. "Let's go." Lin Sun didn't dare to delay any longer. His whole aura became extremely stern. The seriousness of the situation was completely beyond his expectation, which made him anxious and full of killing intent. In the depths of the vast and boundless desert, the world was covered with a layer of cold purple light curtain. The purple light curtain was bright and crystal clear, filled with astonishing fluctuations of the Great Way. If one looked carefully, they would find that the purple light curtain was composed of lines of ancient characters that were as dense as a tide. Each character was as clear as a pearl and as heavy as the Great Way. Every stroke was full of a marvelous rhythm. It was as if those weren't words, but rather living beings. They gathered together, connected to the heavens above, connected to the earth below, continuously surging and fluttering about. The scene was magical and unparalleled. Imperial Prince Xiaohao sat cross-legged within the magnificent purple barrier of light. His hair was disheveled, and his handsome face was pale. A scroll floated up above him, and it seemed as if it was completely polished from violet jade. The pages of the scroll flipped open to reveal rows of words that seemed as if they were forged from the true gold of the Grand Tao, and they held up this violet screen of light that seemed to connect to the heavens. Outside the light curtain, more than a dozen peerless saints were standing in all directions. There were men and women among them. Some had wings on their backs, some were tall, some were covered with dazzling totem Taoist patterns, and some were standing on auspicious clouds. Every one of them was dazzling and mighty. They were distributed in different directions and completely surrounded this purple light curtain. Boom! Great seals, ancient cauldrons, spears, divine swords, gigantic axes. Numerous saint treasures flowed with brilliant colors as they were controlled by the top saints. They bombarded the purple light screen, causing dazzling divine radiance to erupt. Rumbling sounds resounded through the nine heavens. All kinds of Taoist methods with unpredictable power interweaved in the void, deducing all kinds of shocking phenomena and attacking together with the saint treasures. The scene changed the color of heaven and earth, and even the surrounding land within 1,000 miles was sunk. In this kind of attack, the sky-reaching purple light curtain was also shaking violently, buzzing and wailing. I didn't expect that this boy has a complete supreme emperor scripture. Quickly break through it and seize this scripture. Some had fervent expressions, and their eyes were filled with greed. The Emperor Tao scripture was a treasure that even saints, kings, and quasi-emperors coveted. Every single one of them was powerful enough to shake the heavens. Only the Emperor Tao scripture could be so grand, and it could stop the attacks of over a dozen peerless saints with just its aura. Even in our great Luo ancient domain, the Emperor Tao scripture is peerless, and it's controlled by the top emperor-level forces. Yet Xiaohao has an Emperor Tao scripture all by himself. There are also people who were extremely envious. So what if he was a peerless saint? He was in the strongest existence in the 8 regions. To them, an Emperor Tao scripture was priceless, and they didn't even dare to hope to possess it. Yet now, a young man from the ancient desolation domain had an Emperor Tao scripture. How could they not be envious? Cut the crap. Once we kill him, we'll share this Emperor Tao scripture. Someone shouted. In next to no time, the attacks of the peerless saints became even more ferocious. All of them were driven by greed and killing intent, and they used all their strength. Tao runes flowed on the purple light screen, and it shook violently. It was already showing signs of breaking. If it was in the outside world, it wouldn't be like this inside the light screen, Emperor Xiaohao sighed. The Emperor Tao scripture above his head was the supreme inheritance of the Nether Star Imperial clan. Although it was a scripture, it was imprinted with the aura of the Emperor Tao. If it was in the outside world, even a king or sage would find it difficult to shake the power of the scripture. However, in the 9 regions battlefield, the power of the Emperor Tao scripture was also suppressed. Although the aura it released was strong, it was still far inferior to the outside world. Moreover, under the continuous attacks of the foreign enemies, the power of the Emperor Tao scripture was being eroded and was about to collapse. Everyone, there isn't much time left. Later, I will use all my strength to pave a path of blood for everyone and fight for a chance of survival. Whether you live or die in the future will depend on your own luck. Xiaohao took a deep breath. His expression was calm, and there was a hint of disdain in his eyes. He turned around and looked behind him. The second update is here. No matter what the final ranking was, the Goldfish would like to thank everyone for their support over the past few days. The past few days were also the period when the Goldfish's attacks and updates were the most frequent. After writing every day, she would be so tired that her head would spin and her body would ache. She had basically not left the house for the past few days. In particular, after the 10 update yesterday, she had slept for an entire day before barely recovering. However, the Goldfish was very happy because she was passionate about writing. Chapter 1556. Behind him stood a group of experts from the ancient desolation realm. There were hundreds of them, and they were all top figures who had returned alive from the extreme prison secret realm. Old Toad, Alu, Yu Jiaming, Xiao Qinghe, they were all standing among them. Many of them looked sorrowful when they heard Xiaohao's words. We can only blame ourselves for our incompetence. We couldn't become sages in the extreme prison secret realm and drag brother Xiaohao down. Yu Jiaming clenched his teeth and sighed. The others were also sad. They were at a complete disadvantage in the battle in the extreme prison secret realm, and they were almost completely suppressed by the top figures from the other 8 territories. People like them were lucky enough to escape with their lives. More top figures from the ancient desolation realm had been buried in the extreme prison secret realm, and it was impossible for them to return thinking of that. Even though they were all peerless geniuses in the realm of ancient desolation, they couldn't help but feel miserable. Only after entering the Nine Territories battlefield would they realize how cruel, bloody, and dangerous it was. The foundation and strength that they had been so proud of in the past were simply too weak to withstand a single blow from the other 8 regions. Brother Xiaohao, we're useless. We can't fight alongside you, and we've put you in a desperate situation. If we really need to fight with our lives, let us do it ourselves. Taking a deep breath, Xiaoqing spoke in a deep voice with a resolute bearing. When they left the extreme prison secret realm this time, they thought it was impossible for them to survive because there were countless top sages who had surrounded the entrance of the secret realm. However, Imperial Prince Xiaohao had stepped forward bravely in that extremely dangerous situation, and he'd relied on his own strength to save them from their predicament. How could they not be grateful for that? However, it was also because of this that Xiaohao had been chased and besieged. Now, he was in a desperate situation and surrounded by enemies. Yes, with Brother Xiaohao's strength, you can kill your way out. As for us, we've lived long enough. Instead of being a burden, we'd rather fight them with our lives. We'll die without regrets. Many people shouted excitedly. As top figures, which one of them wasn't proud? They were naturally unwilling to become a burden and let a peerless figure like Xiaohao die with them. Xiaohao shook his head helplessly and said, "Everyone, the one those old bastards want to kill the most is me. This is a hopeless situation that cannot be resolved." When he spoke up to here, he took a deep breath and said with a resolute bearing, "So, there's no need for all of you to continue persuading me. If I'm able to use my life in exchange for everyone's lives, then I'll have no regrets even if I die." His tone was calm, yet he carried the great courage to face death ferociously. It caused everyone to be both moved and sad, and the eyes of many had turned red. "Why? Is it worth it?" A woman choked with sobs and screamed. Xiaohao was stunned, and he went silent for a moment before he stood up from the ground. His violet robe fluttered while a wisp of an arrogant expression suffused his handsome face that was pale to the point it was translucent. He smiled and said, "When I decided to save you, I never thought about whether it was worth it or not. As for now, it's just death, so what?" He roared with laughter. His gaze was clear, and his bearing was even more composed. This legendary man had once remained silent for tens of thousands of years, and had once shocked the world with a single day. Now he had decided to fight to the death and break out of this life and death situation for everyone. Was it worth it? He had never considered it. Everyone was silent. Their emotions were surging, and they couldn't calm down for a long time. The purple light curtain covering heaven and earth was wailing and shaking violently. The sages outside were attacking more and more fiercely and crazily. Like a pack of hungry wolves, they were about to devour someone. "Brother Xiaohao." Suddenly, Old Toad spoke with a rare solemnity and respect on his face. "I didn't like you in the past, but this time, if I have a chance to live, I'll definitely avenge you." "Me too," Alu said in a low voice. Xiaohao was stunned for a moment and then burst into laughter again. But then he let out a muffled groan and a trace of blood dripped from his lips. His face became even paler. "There's not much time left," Xiaohao sighed softly. Above his head, the aura of the imperial scripture had begun to dim and was about to disappear. "If there's a chance, tell your elder brother Lin Sun that the biggest regret in my life is that I didn't have a real fight with him. He's the person I admire the most, but also the person I'm most dissatisfied with." Speaking of this, Xiaohao smiled. His eyes were calm, without a trace of emotion, as if he didn't care about life and death. Boom! At the same time, an invisible and terrifying aura of the sage filled the air around him and rose into the sky. Purple divine light surrounded his body, burning and boiling. "Brother Xiaohao." Everyone was extremely sad. Their eyes were red, and they gritted their teeth and clenched their fists. Boom! Purple light rained down from the sky. The light curtain that covered everyone finally couldn't bear the burden and suddenly exploded at this moment. "Ha ha ha!" A burst of wild laughter resounded between heaven and earth. The sages from the 8 regions were wild with joy. Each of them didn't hide their greed and killing intent at all. This time, not only could they kill the top figures of the ancient Desolation realm, but they could also obtain a legendary imperial scripture. It was killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Xiaohao looked indifferent. He held the imperial scripture in his hand and had decided to risk his life to open a path for everyone. Swoosh! But at this moment, a dazzling divine rainbow suddenly appeared in the sky. The sages of the 8 regions who were about to attack narrowed their eyes. Was there an enemy attack? But right after that, they looked indifferently at Xiaohao, who was nearby. If the top sages of the 8 regions attacked, it would mean that there was an enemy attacking. What was the difference between that and suicide? Xiaohao also saw this and narrowed his eyes. Suddenly, there was a shout. "Give it to me!" A middle-aged man with red hair and a fierce body flew across the sky and snatched the imperial scripture in Xiaohao's hand. The other top sages also reacted in an instant. Their eyes glittered. How could they let others snatch it first? They immediately attacked without hesitation. Destroying an emperor scripture and executing an inferior life is clearly too much of a loss. Xiaohao's eyes were calm as he murmured in his heart. The imperial scripture that looked like it was made of purple jade buzzed and trembled at his fingertips. It would explode with a single thought from Xiaohao. By then, even if they were restricted by the power of the laws of heaven and earth, the power produced when the imperial scripture was destroyed would not be something that the top sages could resist. This was the only thing Xiaohao could do before he died. In the blink of an eye, everything happened at the same time. It was inconceivably fast. Whether it was the top sages who wanted to snatch the imperial scripture or Xiaohao who wanted to kill his way out, they did not plan to hold back at all. But there was a finger that was faster than them. It seemed to have appeared out of nowhere and appeared in front of Xiaohao. A dazzling Dao light filled the air and a huge finger smashed down. Boundless. No matter how far it was, it could reach it. Bang! The fierce middle-aged man who attacked first was sent flying by the finger as if he had been crushed by a mountain. Xiaohao's eyes shone. He changed his mind without hesitation and waved his sleeve. The power around him burst forth. The top sages' eyelids twitched. They sensed that something was wrong, but they were still fearless and continued to charge at Xiaohao. Boom! How terrifying was the attack of more than 10 top sages. Even though he changed his mind in time and used his full strength, Xiaohao was still bleeding from his orifices and his body was sent flying. However, when the top sages were about to continue, they were stopped by a dense wave of sword qi that fell from the sky. Every ray of sword qi had earth-shattering power and was extremely sharp. At that moment, the peerless sages were flustered. Who is it? Xiaohao suddenly looked up. Damn it! Which bastard is causing trouble? The top sages of the 8 regions were enraged. Who came to help at this time? Old Toad, Alu, and the other overlords of the ancient Desolation realm, who were behind Xiaohao, also looked up. A figure broke through the sky in the rain of sword qi. He was so fast that he looked like a ray of light. Boom! Only after he arrived did a thunderous spatial ripple appear in the space behind him. From this, one could see how fast he was moving. Xiaohao was dumbfounded. It was him. The people of the ancient Desolation realm also widened their eyes. It was him. Old Toad and Alu couldn't help shouting excitedly, "Brother!" The man descended from the sky. He was wearing a moon-white robe. His black hair fluttered in the wind, and his dark eyes were deep. His whole body was flowing with the charm of the Great Way. It was Lin Sun who had come to help at full speed. At this critical moment, the Crown Prince was willing to risk his life to pave a way out. All the people were sad and angry. Who could imagine that a man who was almost impossible would come from the sky and block all the enemies for the Crown Prince Xiaohao? It was like a dream. Many people thought they were dazzled. An emperor scripture is so precious. How can we waste it on a bunch of old dogs? Lin Sun glanced at Xiaohao and revealed his thoughts. Thank you for saving Old Toad and the others this time. Leave the rest to me. Xiaohao's eyes were full of divine light. He didn't refuse. He could see that Lin Sun had become a top sage. This caused his heart to tremble. It was really Lin's son. The overlords of the ancient Desolation Realm were all excited. They finally believed that this was real. For the overlords of the ancient Desolation Realm, who didn't know that Lin's son was a legendary, peerless figure. Now that he was here, the situation had changed. At this time, the top sages from the 8 regions all looked extremely gloomy. They had finally broken through the barrier and were about to get the Emperor's scripture. But at this moment, someone made trouble and hindered their action, which made them all angry and full of killing intent. How dare you come here alone to die? An old monster was so angry that he laughed. Swish! As soon as he finished speaking, a fiery red figure rushed over from the sky. It was Rual Wu. All of a sudden, the people of the ancient Desolation Realm were in an uproar again. Rual Wu and Xiaohao had entered the Sage Realm one after another. She was extremely talented and stunning. Now she was also here. 2 top sages? Haha, you still can't change the fact that you're going to die. Someone sneered. Chapter 1557. Rual Wu's voice was light, as if she was talking about something normal. But people in the ancient Desolation Realm couldn't help being stunned. What did Fairy Rual Wu mean? Did she think Lin's son could suppress all enemies by himself? Even Xiaohao was stunned. Could Lin's son do it alone? When those words entered the ears of the saints of the 8 regions, it became a great provocation and contempt, causing them to laugh out of extreme anger. How arrogant this little girl was. Hey, I just wanted to catch a big fish, but I didn't expect that 2 of them would come out. I can kill them all at once. Someone sneered. I want that boy dead. The fierce man with red hair and beard looked gloomy. Just now, he was shocked away by Lin Sun's finger in the air, which made him feel ashamed and embarrassed. Not only that boy, but also they can't escape this time. Someone corrected them expressionlessly. They regarded Lin Sun and the others as prey and wanted to catch them all at once. This made people in the ancient Desolation Realm sober up from the initial excitement. Xiaohao was injured. Although Lin Sun and Rual Wu came to help him, there was still a big gap between them and more than 10 top sages. Brother Lin, you came at the right time. You can leave with us and leave the ancient Desolation Realm. Leave the rest to me. Xiaohao took a deep breath and said resolutely, no matter if it was Lin Sun or Rual Wu, their battle prowess was undoubtedly strong. However, they were only 2 people after all. He did not want Lin Sun and Rual Wu to risk their lives here. If they were all wiped out, the ancient Desolation Realm would be finished. If you know this guy's achievements in the Blood Demon Realm, you won't say that. Rual Wu reminded Xiaohao with a strange look and asked him to focus on the show. Xiaohao was skeptical, but when he saw how confident Rual Wu was, he had no choice but to believe her for now. He'd already decided that if the situation went bad, he would give up his life at worst, and he would absolutely not allow the entire army to be annihilated. You don't know who he is? At this time, Rual Wu looked at the top sages again. Those old monsters were stunned. They had been chasing and capturing Xiaohao for the past few days, so it was naturally impossible for them to know what had happened in the 9 regions battlefield. He's just a young man who has stepped into the absolute saint realm. Who else could he be? An old monster sneered. The others also sneered. Do you still want to scare us? These young people in the ancient Desolation Realm were so childish and ridiculous. Seeing this, Rual Wu completely concluded that these old guys really didn't know what Lin Sun had done in the Blood Demon world. A touch of pity couldn't help but appear in her clear eyes. Big brother, how confident are you? Old Toad couldn't help asking. Killing a bunch of old beasts is as easy as flipping my hand. Lin Sun said casually. His words were earth-shattering, leaving Xiaohao and the others dumbfounded. Even at such a time, Fiend God Lin still did not change his domineering nature and was full of boldness. The sages from the 8 regions were so angry that they laughed. This was the first time they had seen such an arrogant young man. Did he really think that he could do whatever he wanted just because he was a saint? I'll kill this little bastard first. The fierce middle-aged man with burning beard and hair took a step forward and suddenly arrived in front of Lin Sun. His palm and fingers were like hammers, shining with divine brilliance, and suddenly smashed out. One punch shocked ghosts and deities. The foundation and power of a peerless saint were vividly demonstrated in this punch. Xiaohao couldn't help but feel nervous. As for the others, they didn't have time to react at all. The speed of this fierce middle-aged man's attack was too fast. Only Ruo Wu's expression remained calm from beginning to end. Almost at the same time, Lin Sun also made a move. He clenched his palm and fingers into a fist, combining the cultivation of body refining, chi refining, and spirit refining into one. Boom! In the deafening sound of the collision, the fierce middle-aged man's fist force exploded inch by inch like a piece of paper. His right arm also exploded, and blood and flesh burst out. He was shocked and terrified. How could he have thought that he was completely no match for Lin Sun in the first confrontation? Almost subconsciously, he endured the pain and dodged. However, Lin Sun's fist force was so terrifying that it didn't allow him to dodge at all. It suddenly poured out, just like a landslide and a tsunami, and broke out in an instant. Bang! The next moment, the fierce middle-aged man's chest collapsed, and his protective power burst into pieces. He was directly hit and flew out. His internal organs were all damaged, and he fell to the ground with a thud, causing smoke and dust to fill the air. One blow, like crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood, had seriously injured an absolute saint. The atmosphere in the field was eerily quiet. Old Toad and the others were stunned, and their hearts trembled. Wasn't it too fierce? Xiaohao couldn't help but gasp. And those absolute saints from the 8 regions changed their expressions one by one. The sneers on their faces froze, and their minds were shaken. How could the power of one punch be so powerful? When they looked at Lin Sun again, their eyes were full of surprise and solemnity. Where did this boy come from? Why hadn't they heard of such a fierce person in the ancient Desolation realm before? Ruo Wu glanced at Xiaohao beside her and couldn't help but smile when she saw the surprise between his eyebrows. She was also shocked when she saw Lin Sun kill a group of absolute saints in front of the city of Dao Protection in the Blood Demon realm. Let me test this boy's strength. Suddenly, a silver ray of light flashed out, and it revealed the figure of a man that was completely bathed in silver divine radiance. He was tall and slender, with a horn on his forehead. His blue eyes were flowing with frightening silver lightning, and his power was overwhelming. Ping Tianlin. He was the absolute saint of the Silver Horn clan in the Julie Ancient domain. He was an old monster who had lived for countless years and had peerless combat power. Boom! As soon as he moved out, numerous clanging silver lightning suddenly charged out from his body to condense into spears, and the aura of destruction covered the surroundings and tore through the sky. Many people felt a stabbing pain in their eyes and felt suffocated. Ruo Wu and Xiaohao joined hands to resist the terrible power of the Absolute Saint. Otherwise, with the strength of Old Toad and the others, they couldn't resist the oppression of such power at all. Their divine souls would be shattered, and their bodies would be torn apart. 9 strikes of silver thunder. Amidst the roars, lightning spears shot out one after another. Just the aura they released was enough to cause the surrounding void to collapse, producing a deafening roar. But Lin Sun didn't dodge. He stepped forward and didn't even resist. Bang! As soon as the first lightning spear arrived in front of Lin Sun, it exploded and turned into fine electric arcs all over the sky. But Lin Sun turned a blind eye to it and continued to move forward. With his black hair fluttering, he was like an invincible devil. Bang! Bang! Next, the lightning spears exploded one after another, but they were all smashed by the invisible power surging around Lin Sun before they could get close. Such a scene caused Xiaohao to feel dizzy. How could this fellow possess such heaven-defying might after attaining the pinnacle of the Saint Realm? Peng Tianlin's face changed completely, and he almost cried out in shock. After witnessing the defeat of the mighty man, he had realized that Lin Sun's combat power was unusual, so he used all his strength to attack with killing moves. Who would have thought that the killing move he was proud of couldn't even get close to Lin Sun? Ignorant. In the indifferent voice, a ray of Taishian sword qi suddenly swept out from Lin Sun's body. Its brilliance was restrained, and it was plain. Even without causing any movement, there was a kind of charm of the elephant is invisible, the great sound is silent, imprinted in it. Not good. But the moment Peng Tianlin saw this sword, his body was covered with a layer of goosebumps, and his hair stood on end. Without hesitation, he took out a copper mace and smashed it with all his strength. Clang! The next moment, Peng Tianlin was sent flying with the copper mace. His body was still in the air, and blood spurted from his mouth and nose as he screamed in pain. When his body fell to the ground, his body actually twitched uncontrollably as if he was having a seizure. That was because the energy within the Taishian sword qi was too overbearing, and it had already invaded his body and was wreaking havoc within his body, causing him to be heavily injured on the spot. This scene shocked the whole audience again. No one didn't look sideways, and no one didn't feel horrified. Again and again, the power Lin Sun showed had shocked and subverted their cognition, which was something no one had expected. The saints from the 8 regions were already facing a formidable enemy at this moment, and their expressions were extremely dignified. No matter how stupid they were, they could realize that the young man in front of them was not to be trifled with. And Xiao Hao finally understood where Ruo Wu's confidence in Lin Sun came from. For a moment, he also sighed with emotion. This guy was worthy of being the only person that he couldn't accept the most, yet he couldn't help but admire. As for Old Toad and the others, they were completely absent-minded, and their minds were in a daze. How terrible the saints were, enough to make any of them despair. But in Lin Sun's hands, they seemed so weak. How strong was Lin Sun now? Let's do it together. In the field, someone shouted, sensing that something was wrong, and wanted to attack together. But Lin Sun sneered, a group of fools. You should have done this long ago. His voice hadn't finished resounding through the air when blazing and dazzling light of the Tao floated up into appearance from his tall and handsome figure. It was boundlessly vast and brilliant like the scorching sun. And at this moment, its power also stirred up the wind and clouds in all directions, making the void of 1,000 miles wail. Retreat! Ruo Wu and Xiao Hao almost immediately took Old Toad and the others to retreat far away. Once they were involved in such an unprecedented battle, the consequences would be unimaginable. Kill! At the same time, more than a dozen saints from different forces in the 8 regions also moved boldly and went all out. No matter how strong Lin Sun was, they were confident that they could kill him if they joined forces. What they didn't know was that by Jinxiong and other saints outside the city of Tao Protector in the Blood Demon realm also thought so. Boom! In the midst of the collapse, Lin Sun fixed his eyes on the powerful middle-aged man with red hair and beard at a glance. The broken sword soared into the sky like lightning. At the same time, the 3,000 Taishian sword qi turned into a sword formation and enveloped Peng Tianlin, the saint of the Silverhorn clan. Both of them were seriously injured, so Lin Sun should take advantage of their weakness to kill them. And Lin Sun rushed to the other saints who were coming to kill him. His power was so great that it was earth-shattering. Obviously, he was alone, but he gave people a domineering feeling that he was the only one in the world. Chapter 1558. How strong was Lin Sun when he attacked with all his might? In the next moment, Xiao Hao and the others witnessed it. Swish! The broken blade struck horizontally, and the fierce sharpness wrapped in dazzling silver divine light fell like a vast snowstorm. The powerful man, who had been seriously injured, was drowned in the blazing torrent of blades without any resistance. His body exploded, and his flesh and blood evaporated into powder. As soon as his nascent soul flashed out, it was completely annihilated by the broken blade amidst his terrified and helpless sharp cries. At the same time, on the other side, the sword formation formed by 3,000 Taishian sword qi crisscrossed, and the dense sword rain made Peng Tianlin unable to resist at all. His body was soon pierced and full of holes. Before he died, he struggled and screamed, full of unwillingness and horror. But in the end, it was useless, and he was erased from the world by the sword formation. In an instant, 2 peerless sages were killed. Xiao Hao felt an unprecedented shock in his mind. As a peerless sage, he knew better than anyone how difficult it was to kill an existence at this level. Even in the entire 9-region battlefield, a peerless sage could be said to be a dominating existence. But now, 2 of them were killed by Lin Sun in an instant. That unparalleled killing power was completely beyond Xiao Hao's expectation. It made him slightly dizzy, and the corners of his mouth twitched. This guy was not a sage, but once he became a sage, it was impossible for people at the same level as him to live. "Are you speechless?" Ruo Wu, who was next to him, said. She was relatively calm because she had seen more shocking and bloody scenes than this. When she saw that Xiao Hao was in the same state as her back then, she actually felt a sense of sympathy for him in her heart. Compared with a monster like Lin Sun, it was easy to feel speechless. "I'm not speechless. I'm very unhappy." Xiao Hao smiled bitterly. "When I was in the peerless domain, I realized that there was not much chance for me to compete with Lin Sun in the peerless king realm. So I secretly made up my mind to fight with this guy when I was in the peerless sage realm." "But who would have thought?" Ruo Wu said with a look of understanding. "Who would have thought that even at the pinnacle of the saint realm, this guy would be so strong that no one would have the interest to compete with him?" Xiao Hao agreed. "Sai, you know me well." Ruo Wu was speechless. Of course, she knew better than Xiao Hao about all the foundation Lin Sun had after he stepped into the absolute realm. Boom! Divine radiance erupted while the glow of the Tao rumbled, and the world was covered by a terrifying aura of destruction. Lin Sun was like an unparalleled god of war. He walked in the void and swam in the void. His every move had the power to swallow mountains and rivers. His opponents were more than 10 peerless sages. If it was any other person at the same realm of cultivation, that person would probably have no choice but to avoid the brunt of this attack and flee. But Lin Sun didn't dodge. On the contrary, he swept across the field with unparalleled power and unstoppable momentum. There was no sign of being suppressed at all. To put it simply, he alone suppressed a group of peerless saints. Old Toad, Alu, and the others swallowed their saliva wildly, their minds in turmoil. They knew Lin Sun best, but now they couldn't see through him at all. Crack! A bronze spear was broken by Lin Sun with a raise of his hand. With a harsh roar, the throat of his opponent, a man with a majestic body and tattoos all over his body, was crushed by Lin Sun. Then, the man was thrown into the material bag, specially prepared by Lin Sun like garbage. How can he be so strong? Someone roared in shock and anger. Those peerless sages were all shocked, and their cheeks were livid. Since the beginning of the battle, 3 peerless sages had been killed, and they couldn't suppress Lin Sun at all, even though they joined forces. It was incredible. It should be known that they were all peerless sages, and more than 10 of them joined forces. In a 9 regions battlefield, they could do anything they wanted. But now, they couldn't do anything to a young man. How could they believe it? Go to hell. Before long, with an earth-shattering explosion, the Tower of Endless Way, which seemed to be made of divine gold, glowed and was swung down by Lin Sun. From a distance, it looked like a god carrying a cauldron, with the momentum to sink the sky. Bang! On the opposite side, a young man who was as short as a dwarf screamed in despair and horror. His body was torn apart, and blood splashed everywhere. The 4th peerless sage was killed. At this time, it was only a moment since the beginning of the battle, not even a quarter of an hour. "Damn it!" someone roared. Suddenly, several peerless sages rushed out, but they didn't kill Lin Sun. Instead, they took the opportunity to rush to Ruo Wu, Xiao Hao, and others in the distance. Obviously, they wanted to use this as a means to contain Lin Sun's attack and take the initiative. At the same time, attacking Ruo Wu and others could also distract Lin Sun. Of course, the best result was to capture Ruo Wu and others. In this way, it would be enough to threaten Lin Sun and make him hesitate to take action. Sure enough, Lin Sun frowned at once, and his black eyes were full of cold, killing intent. 5 peerless sages rushed to Ruo Wu and others together. On the other side, there were 9 peerless sages attacking with all their strength, holding Lin Sun back. It was obvious that they planned to besiege Wei to rescue Zhao and restrain Lin Sun. Moreover, it was too late for Lin Sun to kill them one by one. Do you really think you can reverse the situation in this way? It's futile. In the cold voice, Lin Sun's breath suddenly became extremely fierce, like a sword buried for thousands of years appearing in the world at this moment, piercing the sky. Swish! He stretched out one hand, put his fingers together as a sword, and drew a line in the void. It was an understatement, without a trace of smoke and fire. But at this moment, all the people present felt their hearts tremble. In their sight, there seemed to be a sword chi, which filled the universe and cut through the latitude and longitude, with indescribable meaning imprinted in it. Its sharpness was unparalleled and unrestrained. Its power was unparalleled, and ghosts and gods were scared away. All the strong men who saw this scene felt small, desperate, and suffocating, as if it was not a wisp of sword chi, but a god who controlled life and death. A sword was drawn. The world was silent, and time seemed to stop, showing a strange, extreme silence. Then a bloody head was thrown into the air. There was still a fierce killing intent hanging on his face, and a touch of cruelty and complacency was written in his eyes. He didn't even realize how this sword came to kill him. Puff, 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 puff. Then, heads were thrown into the air one after another, staining this strange and silent scene with a layer of bloody scarlet. It was dazzling red. It was shocking red. No one knew who let out a scream, but it broke this terrifying atmosphere. When everyone came to their senses, they were already drenched in cold sweat. The 5 top sages who rushed to Rual Wu and the others had all become headless corpses. The most ridiculous thing was that their corpses were still rushing forward. Their heads that were thrown into the air still had a grim smile on their faces, and they didn't know that death had already come with this sword. This Rual Wu and Xiao Hao were ready to defend themselves, but at this moment they were also shocked. That wisp of sword chi made them feel their hearts tremble. As for Old Toad and the others, they didn't feel anything because this sword was so fast that they had no time to react or perceive it. However, when they saw the peerless sages charging toward them being beheaded one after another, they were all stunned and dumbfounded. If they weren't sure that all this was real, they would have suspected that they were hallucinating. After all, those were 5 top sages, and in their eyes, they were existences that they couldn't surpass and shake. How is this possible? The other top sages who were restraining Lin Sun all felt as if they were struck by lightning. They were shocked by this stunning sword, and their pupils suddenly contracted. With a series of thuds, the corpses and heads fell to the ground one after another. They were all dead, and there was no possibility of them coming back to life. This was what it meant to be gone with no return. Battle Emperor Wu Yang had learned nothing more than this sword technique, but he had used everything he had learned, and the mystery it contained was so terrifying that it couldn't be compared to ordinary swords. In the past, the power of this move could be said to be shocking, and it was Lin Sun's trump card, and he wouldn't use it easily. Now, this was the first time he used the power of the top sages to release the comprehension of the 3 fuses into one sword. The power did not disappoint Lin Sun. This sword had killed 5 peerless saints. This sword also scared the other top sages out of their wits, causing them to be completely terrified, and their hearts trembled uncontrollably. It was terrible. If it was said that Lin Sun killed the top sages one by one before, it was a kind of heaven-defying killing power that could barely be understood. But now, the might revealed by this sword strike seemed to be too shocking, and they were utterly unable to comprehend it. After all, who had ever seen the power to kill 5 sages in the same realm? Looking at the 8 regions, from ancient to modern times, how many people could kill a group of enemies with one sword in this realm? Run. This was the same thought in the minds of the remaining 9 top sages. After that, they didn't hesitate at all to flee with a bang and teleport towards all directions. All of them were like old rabbits that were terrified out of their wits, and they fled faster than anyone else. This battle couldn't go on at all. Although Lin Sun was young, the power he possessed was enough to sweep away everything, as if he was invincible. In their view, In the current 9 regions battlefield, the only people who could fight against Lin Sun were the leaders of the 8 invincibles of green darkness. How could Lin Sun just watch them leave? Without hesitation, he chased after them. Taishien's sword Qi, broken blade, tower of endless Tao, insignificant bow. All kinds of treasures and secret methods were released by him with all his strength. Boom! Between heaven and earth, there was a turbulence. Terrible divine light, Taoist sound, and treasure light swept across, whistling and spreading. In just a few breaths, several top sages were killed one after another. One was pierced by the blue sky arrow, and his blood spilled all over the world. One was cut in half by the broken blade, and his body lay on the ground. The last top sage to escape was directly killed by Taishien's sword Qi and tower of endless Tao. His death was the most miserable, and his blood and bones were ground up. Once the fighting spirit collapsed, even a top sage couldn't escape the fate of defeat. What Goldfish could do was to thank everyone for their support. Chapter 1559. Shrill screams reverberated between heaven and earth. The pungent smell of blood, mixed with the biting cold wind, was still too strong to dissipate. In the sky, a dazzling blood-red light filled the air, and the mournful cries of Saint Fall echoed. When the battle came to an end, only 4 peerless saints managed to escape. They were lucky enough to survive, but they were already scared out of their wits and were panicking like stray dogs. It wasn't that Lin Sun didn't have the ability to chase after them, but it would take him time and energy. For him, the most urgent task was to ensure the safety of Xiaohao, Old Toad, and Alu, rather than to chase after the enemies all the way. Even so, when they saw his figure return, everyone, including Ruo Wu, raised their heads at the same time and looked over in unison. Dressed in a moon-white robe, his black hair fluttering in the wind, he walked in the void without being stained by a speck of dust. His temperament was ethereal like that of a banished immortal. This was Lin Sun. This was the demon Lin they were familiar with. But who would dare imagine that such a young man who seemed to be tranquil like water would be able to shock the world like a devil god when he launched in a battle? In less than a quarter of an hour, 14 top saints were killed one after another, and only 4 were lucky enough to escape. In particular, the stunning and peerless sword cut off the heads of 5 saints in an instant. That kind of demeanor was like a legendary sword immortal descending to the world. From the beginning to the end, he was never injured. He alone suppressed the enemies and was invincible. At this time, seeing Lin Sun coming, Ruo Wu, Xiaohao, Old Toad, Alu, and other top figures in the ancient desolation realm all felt as if they were looking at a god. After a while, Xiaohao came to his senses and sighed. In this realm, I have no regrets. Ruo Wu understood and said with a smile, there is no hurry to fight for the Tao. As long as you are alive, there will be plenty of opportunities in the future. Before, Xiaohao once said that his biggest regret was that he didn't compete with Lin Sun. But obviously, he had changed his mind now. Big brother, I knew it. It's fine if you don't come. Once you come, you can suppress all enemies with your strength. Alu and Old Toad rushed forward to greet Lin Sun excitedly. Lin Sun also felt completely at ease at this moment. He smiled and punched the 2 of them, saying, it's good that you're fine. It's thanks to Brother Xiaohao that you can survive this time. As he spoke, he cupped his fists and bowed to express his gratitude. Brother Xiaohao, thank you so much. Xiaohao smiled lightheartedly and said, what are you thanking me for? If I really want to thank someone, I should be thanking you for arriving in time and saving everyone from disaster. What about me? Is no one going to thank me? That would hurt my pride. Ruo Wu opened her eyes wide and pretended to be angry. Xiaohao and Lin Sun looked at each other and couldn't help laughing. Seeing this, Ruo Wu also couldn't help laughing, which was indescribably beautiful. There were some words that didn't need to be said too clearly. It was enough for both of them to understand and understand. In the distance, a group of peerless figures of the ancient desolation realm walked over, thanking Xiaohao, Lin Sun, and Ruo Wu. Lin Sun also saw Yu Jiaming, Xiao Qinghe, and other familiar friends. He felt more fortunate that he came in time this time. Otherwise, he didn't dare to imagine the consequences of this battle. After a brief conversation, Lin Sun and Ruo Wu cleaned up the battlefield and collected the corpses, flesh, and treasures one by one. Only then did they leave the desert with the group. This wasn't a good place to reminisce. On the way, Xiao Hao couldn't help but clap his hands and laugh when he found out why Lin Sun and Ruo Wu came to the ancient desolation realm. He said with a smile, "So you guys also want to rebuild the city of Dao Protectors? That couldn't be better. Count me in as well. We'll join in as well." The other peerless figures of the ancient desolation realm also chimed in. Lin Sun naturally understood that there was strength in numbers. Most importantly, the reason why he wanted to rebuild the city of Dao Protectors was to provide a shelter for the experts of the ancient desolation realm. It couldn't be better if Xiao Hao and the others joined in. Lin Sun immediately took out the vast universe arc and carried everyone towards the ruins of the city of Dao Protectors. There were dangers everywhere in the ancient desolation realm, and enemies from the 8 regions could be seen everywhere. But Lin Sun couldn't be bothered with them. Things had to be done quickly. Once everyone was settled, there would be plenty of opportunities to kill the enemies in the future. Funnily enough, there were still some twists and turns along the way. Some enemies from the 8 regions wanted to attack the vast universe arc before they could figure out the situation. The result was obvious. Lin Sun didn't even need to do anything. Ruo Wu alone could easily deal with everything. "You haven't been able to contact Jingxian and the big blackbird?" "Yes." Lin Sun couldn't help but frown when he heard Old Toad and Alu's answers. He was a little worried. Lin Sun had a deep understanding of the cruelty and danger of the 9 regions battlefield, so he couldn't help but worry about Zhao Jingshuan's safety. As for the big blackbird, Lin Sun wasn't so worried. This cunning and black-hearted bird might not have outstanding combat strength, but when it came to escaping, even Lin Sun sighed at his inferiority. "Miss Zhao is blessed by the heavens. She'll definitely be fine. Don't worry, big brother." Old Toad comforted. He and Alu were well aware of the subtle relationship between Lin Sun and Zhao Jingxian. They were worried that Lin Sun would be depressed. "That's the only way." Lin Sun sighed softly. The 9 regions battlefield was too big. Each region was comparable to a boundary, and there were 8 enemy forces. Searching blindly was no different from looking for a needle in a haystack. Lin Sun could only hope that when the news of his appearance in the ancient wasteland world spread, Zhao Jingxian would hear it and come to meet him. "What about you? Why didn't you become saints after entering the extreme prison secret realm?" Lin Sun asked casually. At the mention of this, Old Toad and Alu gnashed their teeth in anger, looking like they wanted to kill someone. Then Lin Sun learned something about what happened in the extreme prison secret realm. Some time ago, when the extreme prison secret realm came, many peerless figures from the 9 regions chose to enter it to seek the opportunity to become saints. Restricted by the power of rules in the extreme prison secret realm, peerless saints couldn't get close to the secret realm. Therefore, the peerless figures of the ancient wasteland realm didn't encounter any obstacles and entered smoothly. Originally, this was a relatively fair competition. All of them were in the longevity 9th retribution realm. But what the ancient wasteland realm didn't expect at all. As soon as they entered the extreme prison secret realm, they were jointly suppressed by the strong figures of the other 8 regions, who wanted to kill them all. There were not many strong figures of the ancient wasteland realm who were qualified to enter the extreme prison secret realm, and they were targeted and bullied like this. According to Old Toad and Alu, it was difficult for the strong figures of the ancient wasteland realm to survive, not to mention to seek the opportunity to become saints. When the extreme prison secret realm came to an end, more than half of the strong figures of the ancient wasteland realm died in it. Only 100 of them were lucky enough to escape. There are not many peerless figures in our ancient wasteland realm, but this time, hundreds of people died in the extreme prison secret realm alone. Speaking of this, Alu's eyes were red, and the blue veins on his forehead stood out. "Brother, ask Emo Tianhe of Xianjin House Wang Xuanyu of Tai sect. Old Toad said some familiar names one after another, and his voice became lower and lower. They have all suffered. Lin Sun's black eyes suddenly shrank, and he was stunned. Back then, in the upper 9 territories of the extreme prison domain, they had gathered together to drink and chat merrily. How happy and comfortable it was. But who would have thought that these acquaintances had all suffered and could no longer appear in the world for a time? Lin Sun's mood fluctuated, and he couldn't calm down. Perhaps it couldn't be said that he had truly gone through life and death with these people, but he had still met and talked with them before. Now hearing their bad news, how could Lin Sun remain indifferent? Brother, only when I entered the 9-region battlefield did I find that our previous battles were just small fights. Alu's face fell. The enemies of the 8 regions are too hateful. They regarded us as grass and wantonly bullied and killed us. This feeling is really King uncomfortable. Old Toad gnashed its teeth. I've never been so aggrieved before. Do you know, in the absolute prison secret realm, I watched helplessly as a woman who possessed extraordinary talent and was as beautiful as a fairy was captured by those beasts, tortured and ravaged like pigs and dogs. No matter how much she begged for death, she couldn't. He clenched his fists, took a deep breath, and suppressed the hostility in his heart. Later, I personally freed her. I killed her myself, but her face was full of gratitude from the bottom of her heart. Lin Sun took out a wine gourd and handed it to Old Toad. Old Toad raised his head and drank wildly. Then he exhaled a long, turbid breath and said firmly, "At that time, I swore that as long as I was alive, I would kill all those beasts in the future." Of course. Alu nodded fiercely. Lin Sun looked at the undisguised hatred between their eyebrows. Thinking of the tragic scenes he had seen all the way in the Blood Demon territory, he became more and more silent. His heart became as hard as iron. Half an hour later, vast universe arc stopped, and a group of people floated to the ground. What came into view was a barren land full of dust and sand, ravines crisscrossed, and full of holes. The moaning wind blew, raising the sand all over the sky. No one knew how many years the sand had been drifting, but it still had the color of dried blood. Rotten bones and broken armors could be vaguely seen on the ground. This is the ruins of the city of Tau Protector in the ancient Desolation realm. During the First War, there was a towering city of thousands of miles, which stood here to shelter the experts of the ancient Desolation from the wind and rain and to resist the foreign enemies. Xiao Hao put his hands behind his back and said with emotion, "However, after so many years, everything has become a thing of the past and the fiasco. Only endless blood, hatred, shame, and humiliation are left." Lin Sun looked around. After a while, he looked at the people around him and said, "In the next period of time, I will stay here and rebuild a city with the blood and bones of the enemies to protect the people of the ancient Desolation realm and resist the foreign enemies. I hope you can help me." Everyone's emotions surged, and they agreed without exception. From this day on, Lin Sun and the others stayed here to plan the reconstruction of the city of Tau Protector. Chapter 1560. Meanwhile, in the Dark North realm, in a massive palace on the sea, Kuan Xiaoyu stood with his hands behind his back as he gazed into the distance. "Congratulations, young lord, on attaining the pinnacle of the Saint realm." On the square in front of the main hall, the powerhouses of the Kuan clan, the #1 clan in the northern underworld ancient region, regardless of whether they were immortal-level kings, ordinary true sages, or peerless sages, all bowed to pay their respects. Kuan Xiaoyu. He was one of the green underworld 8 absolutes, the top war god of the younger generation of the Kuan tribe, and a legendary supreme genius whose name was known throughout the northern underworld ancient region. He was dressed in a black robe with wide sleeves. His eyes were long and narrow, and the bridge of his nose was tall and straight. Just by standing there casually, he seemed to be able to move 90,000 li. Following that, the experts from the other clans in the Northern Darkstar ancient domain bowed to express their congratulations. The might of a single person was enough to dominate the entire field. Kuan Xiaoyu retracted his gaze and glanced at the crowd on the square before turning to enter the main hall. From the beginning to the end, his expression did not change. But when he walked into the hall, he seemed to have thought of something, and he stopped and said, "I heard that an expert from the ancient desolation realm named Lin Sun turned the blood demon realm upside down not long ago. Help me investigate him." "Yes." In the corner, the figure of a grayish old man appeared. He bowed to the leader and quickly disappeared from the hall. When Xuechingi returns, he'll probably fly into a rage. I'd like to see what he'll do in the face of such humiliation. Sitting on the only throne in the hall, Kuan Xiaoyu fell into deep thought. Lin Sun? He didn't care. He was just curious whether Xuechingi, who was also one of the 8 skills of Green Hell, would personally come out and kill this guy called Lin Sun. Absolute World. Interesting. While we were in the Absolute Prison Secret Realm, the Blood Demon world was actually thrown into chaos by a single person. They lost all their face. He wore a jade robe, and his forehead was bright and clean. His eyebrows were like swords, and his eyes were like stars. He seemed to be deep in thought. The candlelight illuminated the sky. One of the 8 lethals of Green Destiny, the Emperor of the Illumination Dragon lineage of the ancient Yin region. Damn it, it must be that guy. Zhu Yingxue suddenly shouted angrily. A cold gleam appeared in Zhu Yingkong's eyes. You're saying that this Lin Sun is the guy who defeated you and the envoys from the other domains in the ancient desolation realm? I can't be wrong. Zhu Yingxue clenched her teeth and said, back then, at the summit of the White Jade Capital's soul refining tower, this guy was extremely arrogant. He was regarded as the #1 expert in the realm of ancient desolation. I see. Zhu Yingkong nodded. Brother, you have to avenge me. I don't want you to kill that guy. I just want you to capture him alive. I want to tame him and make him my slave, so that he can only crawl under my feet for the rest of his life. Every time Zhu Yingxue thought of her defeat in the realm of ancient desolation, she was so hateful that her whole body shivered. All right, as you wish. Zhu Yingkong had a gentle look in his eyes as he stroked his little sister's head in a doting manner. This little sister of his had never held such a grudge against someone before. Since she had a request, as her brother, how could he not agree? Some of the nearby experts of the Illumination Dragon bloodline couldn't help but reveal looks of envy. In the entire clan, Prince Zhu Yingkong was the most arrogant and aloof, but he was the only one who doted on his little sister. However, let's wait and see Xuechingi's reaction. If I can kill him with a borrowed knife, why not? Zhu Yingkong said slowly. Zenith Heaven Realm, in front of a sword hut. As the attendant beside him reported, a man wearing feathered clothes with a flying sword as a hairpin slowly opened his eyes. There seemed to be a heavenly sword flashing in the depths of his eyes that could cut through all things and crush galaxies. Junior Brother Mu, you fought with Lin Sun before. What kind of person do you think he is? The man in feathered clothes spoke. His voice carried a sonorous aura that was like the hum of a sword. It went straight to the heart and was extremely terrifying. Jian Qingshun. He was the successor of the #1 sword sect of the Zenith Heaven Ancient Region, the Sky Sword Pavilion. He was one of the 8 regions of Green Underworld, and he was a rare genius in the way of the sword. In the Zenith Heaven Ancient Region, which was filled with sword cultivators, Jian Qingshun's name was as dazzling as the sun in the sky. His sword Dao had long since reigned supreme amongst his peers and reigned supreme. He's very strong and domineering. Before he became a saint, his combat power could almost be compared to yours. He gives off an unfathomable and unshakable feeling. Mu Zhaixing's expression was complicated. He still had lingering fear when he thought of the fiasco he experienced when he went to the ancient desolation realm as a messenger. Oh, there's such a person in the ancient desolation realm? Jian Qingshun, who had originally asked this question casually, finally became interested. I also didn't expect that the ancient desolation region, which had already declined a long time ago, would have such an unexpected genius. Now, he has also become a saint and caused a great disturbance in the blood demon world. Based on this, even in the saint realm, he is not an ordinary person. Mu Zhaixing took a deep breath and analyzed carefully. Jian Qingshun listened quietly and nodded. He's indeed extraordinary. It's not surprising that such a peerless figure was born in the ancient desolation realm after thousands of years. After a pause, he smiled and said, "However, it depends on whether he can withstand Xueqingyi's anger. If he can survive." Mu Zhaixing pricked up his ears. But in the end, Jian Qingshun didn't say anything. He closed his eyes and began to meditate. Mu Zhaixing wanted to say something, but he held it in. He knew that a legendary figure like senior brother Jian Qingshun didn't need to be reminded. Similar situations were happening in other areas of the Nine Regions battlefield. Jili Domain. Qi Wushu, the emperor's son of the Qi clan and the leader of the Jili ancient domain forces, only snorted. In the ancient desolation realm, he's the only one worth looking at, but he still can't escape death. Star Fiend Domain. Shurpohei, a direct descendant of the Imperial Shur clan and the leader of the Star Fiend Ancient Realms forces, laughed in schadenfreude when he heard this news. I've always found Xueqingyi an eyesore. Now, his blood demon world has suffered a great loss and lost all face. Skyfire Domain. Lin Sun? He's just one person. He can't change the fate of the ancient desolation realm alone. Lai Qian, the descendant of the Imperial Lai clan and one of the 8 ultimate heroes of Green Darkness, commented with disdain. East Mulberry Domain. Huahong Xiao, the bald, barefooted, fiery eyes and devilish face, only said one sentence after hearing the news. This kid must die. The ancient desolation realm must lose. We can't go against a trend. As the number 1 direct descendant of the Divine Path sect, the number 1 orthodoxy in the East Mulberry Ancient Domain, no one dared to question his words. Blood Demon Realm. City of Dao Protector's Victory Tower. Lord Xueqingyi had returned. At this moment, countless eyes in the city were focused on Victory Tower. Everyone was anxious and didn't dare to breathe too loudly. The atmosphere in the huge city was strangely silent. In the hall on the 9th floor of Victory Tower, the air seemed to have frozen. It was so oppressive that people almost couldn't breathe. The important figures from the Blood Demon Ancient Domain forces all felt like they were sitting on pins and needles. They lowered their heads and tensed their hearts. They didn't dare to look at Xueqingyi, who was sitting in the main seat in the center. Tap, tap, tap. Xueqingyi's fair and slender fingers tapped on the back of the chair, becoming the only sound in the hall. He was still dressed in green, and his thick black hair was loose. He sat there lazily with one hand supporting his chin. His scarlet eyes were slightly narrowed, and he seemed to be in deep thought. But no one knew what he was thinking at this moment. The atmosphere became more and more oppressive. Almost all the important figures in the hall were peak sages, and all of them were like sovereigns. But at this moment, they were silent like cicadas in winter. In particular, the 6th elder of the Khanate demon sect, Bai Jinxiong's face was slightly pale. She was nervous, perturbed, and terrified to the extreme. The massacre that Lin Sun had caused a while ago had caused the Blood Demon Ancient Domain to lose face, and their morale had suffered a heavy blow. Now, they had become a joke in the Nine Regions battlefield. Such humiliation and hatred had all happened during the period when Bai Jinxiong was in control of the situation. How could he not feel perturbed? At this moment, he felt like a prisoner waiting to be judged. It was extremely unbearable. After a long time, a light sigh sounded and broke the deathly silence in the hall. Thump! But when she heard this sigh, Bai Jinxiong seemed to be unable to bear it anymore. She suddenly knelt on the ground and said with a trembling voice, "Everything is because of my incompetence. If anyone is to be punished, I am willing to bear it alone." Everyone looked at her. On the central seat, Xueqingyi raised his scarlet eyes and glanced at Bai Jinxiong. He said, "Now, the forces of the other 7 regions must be waiting to see us make a fool of ourselves. At this time, I can no longer be bothered to argue about who is right and who is wrong." As he spoke, he stood up and walked forward to help Bai Jinxiong up. He patted her shoulder and said, "Martial uncle, this matter is not your fault. Why do you need to kneel?" Bai Jinxiong was stunned, and then she revealed a moved expression. The corners of her lips trembled, and she felt like she was about to cry. No one knew how torturous, fearful, and uneasy he had been feeling ever since that cruel and bloody attack. Originally, he had been prepared to be punished, but who would have thought that Xue Qingyi did not punish him? Qingyi, I will definitely make up for it. Bai Jianxiong took a deep breath and said through gritted teeth. The other important figures present also revealed hatred. Lin Sun had caused chaos in the blood demon world, causing them to suffer heavy casualties and become a laughingstock. He should be hacked into pieces. Xue Qingyi smiled and returned to his seat. He swept his gaze across the crowd and said, "After suffering such great injustice, everyone knows that I will definitely not be able to swallow this. Just wait and see how I will counterattack." In the hall, everyone sat upright and still. They knew that Xue Qingyi was about to make a decision on this matter. But how can I let them do as they wish? Xue Qingyi suddenly sneered. They want me to personally go and kill Lin Sun? Not a chance. Everyone was stunned. Not taking revenge? They could not understand this. How could they not take revenge for such a great enmity? If news of this spread, the blood demon ancient region would definitely be seen as weak and powerless. Of course we will take revenge, but not now. Xue Qingyi took a deep breath and said indifferently while tapping his fingers on the armrest of the chair. Chapter 1561. Xue Qingyi left Bai Jianxiong behind to disperse the crowd. Do you understand why I'm doing this? Xue Qingyi only spoke when there was no one left in the hall. Bai Jianxiong thought for a long time before her eyes lit up. Preserving our strength and killing with a borrowed knife? Xue Qingyi sighed. Including Lei Xue and the others, a total of 30 saints have fallen from our blood demon ancient region's camp. This loss isn't small at all. In the future, our 8 regions will compete for hegemony. This loss alone is enough to put our blood demon ancient region in a disadvantageous position. Under such circumstances, it would be best if I disregard everything and kill Lin Sun. But what if I can't? Bai Jianxiong couldn't help but say, Qingyi, with your current strength, how can Lin Sun be your match? Xue Qingyi's scarlet eyes shone with a frightening light. Do you think someone like Lin Sun will wait for me to kill him? Not to mention, he stared at Bai Jianxiong and said, Senior uncle, you've seen Lin Sun's methods with your own eyes. Do you still not understand that it's not that easy to kill him? Lei Xue and the others attacked together, but they failed. Lei Tianheng and the others attacked together, but they also failed. Lai Yu and the other 4, as well as the other 16 peak-level saints, all failed. The entire city of Dao Protectors was besieged by him alone. Xue Qingyi's eyes shone with a frightening light as he spoke in a low and frightening voice. Senior uncle, do you still think that taking revenge now is a wise choice? Bai Jianxiong shuddered, and a chill ran down her spine. Xue Qingyi retracted his gaze, and his expression returned to indifference. I've already said that Lin Sun is a knife. He can cut us, but he can also cut off a few pieces of flesh from the other 7 regions. Don't the other regions want to watch him make a fool of himself? I won't let them get what they want. If we're going to suffer, we'll all suffer together. No one can escape. Towards the end, Xue Qingyi radiated with an oppressive aura, and her face was completely cold. Bai Jianxiong couldn't help but ask, then, are we just going to endure it and do nothing? Xue Qingyi pondered. Of course we can't do nothing. Bai Jianxiong became spirited. Xue Qingyi said firmly, withdraw all the forces of the blood demon ancient region from the ancient wasteland world. In the future, no one is allowed to take a single step into the ancient wasteland world without my orders. What? Bai Jianxiong was dumbfounded and almost screamed. Wouldn't they be telling the other territories that the blood demon ancient region was bowing to the ancient desolation region? Uncle Master, of course we can't do this openly. Xue Qingyi sighed softly. She was a bit disappointed by Bai Jianxiong's reaction, but she couldn't be bothered to explain further. Go, just do as I say. Although Bai Jianxiong still had some doubts, she still accepted the order and left. Xue Qingyi stood silently in the hall for a long time before a terrifying killing intent surged out from his body. How could he not be angry after suffering such humiliation? Lin, I'll let you jump around for a while longer. Let's see how sharp your blade is. In the future, I will slowly settle this debt with you. His voice was filled with killing intent and endless hatred as it resounded in the silent and empty hall. What? Xuechingi endured it? Could it be that the blood demon world's losses are too great, that Xuechingi doesn't dare to act rashly? This Xuechingi must have other plans. Haha, this Xuechingi clearly doesn't want to be used by others. Not long after, news of Xuechingi's decision spread, and the leaders of the other territories learned of it. For a moment, everyone was shocked and made all sorts of guesses. Xuechingi could actually endure such a great enmity. What was he planning? It was also because of this news that the experts of the other realms couldn't help but laugh. They all thought that Xuechingi, a dignified leader of a realm, a proud existence of the green underworld 8 absolutes, was too cowardly and unbearable to endure at such time. This Xuechingi is too cowardly. I wonder how he became one of the 8 absolutes of green darkness. Does he think that the blood demon ancient region hasn't lost enough face? He was actually scared by a peerless saint of the ancient desolation region. This Xuechingi is too disappointing. As more and more people learned of this news, the other territories were filled with all sorts of mockery. Xuechingi's reputation suffered a great blow. Xuechingi didn't explain anything. Since that day, he had been meditating, cultivating, and staying in seclusion. He was indifferent. No matter what, the storm caused by Lin Sun died down under Xuechingi's forbearance. But Lin Sun's name also entered the eyes of the 8 territories, and everyone knew him. Now, everyone knew that the ancient desolation camp, which was extremely weak and dilapidated, had finally produced an eye-catching character. But that was all. After all, Lin Sun was just one person. In a 9-territory battlefield where there were so many forces and peerless experts, he was destined to fail the ancient desolation camp. This was the unanimous opinion of the experts of the 8 territories. At this time, Lin Sun was wandering around the ruins of the city of Dao Protectors, deducing and thinking from time to time. To build an unbreakable city of Dao Protectors, the layout of the city protection formation was undoubtedly the most important part. As a Taoist tattoo master, it wasn't difficult for Lin Sun to set up such a large formation with his current skills. It just took a lot of time and energy to deduce. This was already the 19th day since he surveyed the terrain and deduced the formation. During this period, Xiaohao, Ruo Wu, and other experts of the ancient desolation domain had built a temporary camp on the ruins. During this period, countless foreign enemies from the 8 territories came one after another like flies smelling blood. But before they could get close, they were killed by Xiaohao and Ruo Wu together. None of them survived. The corpses and blood left behind by the enemies were all collected. They would be materials for the future construction, so naturally, the more the better. In these 2 days, the number of enemies who came to invade us has decreased significantly. If this continues, it will be a little troublesome to collect materials for the construction. Ruo Wu said in a low voice. The real tough ones haven't appeared yet. Xiaohao looked into the distance with clear eyes. You should know that most of the foreign enemies from the 8 territories who are wreaking havoc in the ancient desolation domain are led by ordinary true sages. They naturally pose no threat to us. I believe that they must have realized by now that we are not to be trifled with. Since they feel that they are not strong enough, they won't dare to come and court death. However, when they understand the purpose of our gathering here, the big shots of the foreign enemies from the 8 territories will definitely not sit still. After all, who can stand by and watch us rebuild the city of Dao Protectors? Ruo Wu nodded and her eyes flickered. So, when we really start to build the city, we will definitely encounter unimaginable obstacles? That's for sure. Xiaohao's tone was calm. This storm will come sooner or later. But for now, the situation isn't that serious. Speaking of this, he could not help but smile bitterly. The most important thing is that Lin Sun is determined to build the city with the corpses and flesh of his enemies. But the materials needed to build such a big city are unimaginably huge. What we have collected so far is just a drop in the bucket. We can't even build a city wall with them." Ruo Wu was speechless. She raised her head and looked at Lin Sun, who was concentrating on deducing the formation diagram in the distance. She said, "We don't have to rush this matter. I believe that since he has decided to do this, he must have a way." Xiaohao nodded and suddenly said, "It's not a good idea to just wait here. It's too passive. In the next period of time, I plan to take some experts of the ancient desolation domain out to train." "Where?" Ruo Wu was stunned. Xiaohao put his hands behind his back and looked disdainfully at the surroundings. "This is the territory of the ancient desolation domain. Now there are so many foreign enemies invading it and wreaking havoc everywhere. I plan to wipe them out one by one." After a pause, he said, "At the same time, we can also help Lin Sun collect more materials to build the city." "Why not?" Ruo Wu nodded and said, "Be careful." The corner of Xiaohao's lips curled into a confident smile. "It won't be that easy to kill me." On the same day, Xiaohao left with a group of 50 experts of the ancient desolation domain. Seeing them off, Ruo Wu sighed inwardly. Xiaohao, the prince of the ancient desolation domain, was indeed a peerless figure with great courage and ambition. He already had the ability and strength to lead the others. It was difficult for such a proud man to obey and cooperate with others. But Xiaohao was different. Even though Lin Sun was the leader of the ancient desolation domain, he never showed any resistance or dissatisfaction. On the contrary, all his actions were based on the overall situation, and he unreservedly contributed to the ancient desolation domain. Ruo Wu, who had been worried that Xiaohao and Lin Sun might have an internal conflict, was secretly relieved and couldn't help admiring Xiaohao. Ruo Wu was even sure that without Lin Sun, Xiaohao would be the leader of the ancient desolation domain, and Xiaohao was destined not to let them down. Ruo Wu couldn't help taking another look at Lin Sun in the distance. This guy was also different. He never had the consciousness of controlling everything, nor did he have the consciousness of a leader. But Xiaohao was willing to cooperate with him, which was really strange. Thinking of this, Ruo Wu was stunned. Wasn't she the same? From the first time she met him in the blood demon realm until now, she had unconsciously followed him and followed his lead. And it seemed that Xiaohao had never resisted or resisted. People can't help but follow him wholeheartedly. Maybe this guy is a natural leader? Ruo Wu was lost in thought. Chapter 1562. It was very easy to make a group of ordinary people regard him as a leader. He just needed to give them benefits, meet their needs, and have a set of commanding skills. It was very difficult to make a group of practitioners regard him as a leader. It was like being in charge of a sect. If you wanted to command a group of strong practitioners, you must have the strength, wisdom, and majesty to take charge of an area. And to make the top sages like Xiaohao and Ruo Wu willing to work with you and regard you as a leader, it was more difficult than going to heaven. After all, in the ancient desolation realm, a sage was already a giant standing on the top of the world. And the top sages were even more different. At least in the endless years since ancient times, there had never been a top sage in the ancient desolation realm. It was also a period of time before the opening of the Nine Regions battlefield that Xiaohao and Ruo Wu set foot on the top of the Saint Realm and became more dazzling legendary figures than ordinary true sages. But Lin Sun had obviously never worked hard for this, but he had unintentionally achieved something more difficult than going to heaven. For example, now, Xiaohao and Ruo Wu were vaguely following his lead. Ruo Wu had no choice but to accept it. Time flew, and a month passed in the blink of an eye. During this month, Xiaohao led a group of strong practitioners of the ancient desolation realm to different areas of the ancient desolation realm, setting off bloody storms one after another. No one knew how many foreign enemy forces wandering in the ancient desolation realm were wiped out. With Xiaohao, a peerless saint, at the helm, the battles along the way were unstoppable and invincible. And then, batch after batch of enemies' bones and blood, which were used as building materials, were sent to the temporary camp. The corpses were piled up into small hills. The blood was poured into one pool after another that had been dug. In a huge temporary camp, there was a bloody scene of corpse mountain and blood pool. Because it was too bloody, there were even many ferocious visions above the corpse mountain and blood pool. Like the raging wind and thunder, the sound of ghosts crying and wolves howling lasted for a long time. It should be known that almost all the enemies who were slaughtered were kings of the longevity tribulation realm, and some of them were even true sages. Even if they'd been killed, resentment and hatred would still remain within their corpses and blood. Now that they'd been piled up together, it wasn't strange for them to cause some terrifying and horrifying phenomena. For this reason, Lin Sun specially set up a restriction to suppress it. Otherwise, when the corpses and blood were piled up in one place, the aura emitted would be so fierce that it could even affect people's minds. During these days, the experts in the realm of ancient desolation seemed to have found their backbone. Instead of panicking and desperate like before, they were all full of fighting spirit. Some were seizing every minute and second to cultivate diligently. Some helped to search for cultivation resources in different regions of the ancient wasteland world. The 9 regions battlefield was vast and boundless, with many secret realms dotting it. Some secret realms were filled with great danger, but there were also secret realms filled with unimaginable opportunities. Amongst these fortuitous encounters were mostly divine materials, precious herbs, rare treasures, and so on and so forth that were difficult to find in the outside world. Some treasures were so rare that even saints coveted them to the extreme. To put it simply, recently, the entire temporary camp had been bustling with activity and vigor every single day. Ruo Wu saw all of this and was extremely excited in her heart. She didn't even dare to think about it before. All these changes had happened in just over a month's time. In the distance, Xiaohao led a group of experts back to the campsite. Every single one of them was in high spirits. Obviously, today's harvest was very good. Ruo Wu couldn't help but look into the distance again. There, Lin Sun was thinking and deducing intently as before, completely forgetting himself. A trace of absent-mindedness appeared between her brows, and she muttered in her heart, "No more wandering, no more fleeing in panic. How good would it be if I could continue like this?" Immediately, Ruo Wu calmed down. This was the 9 regions battlefield. The temporary peace would eventually be broken. Bloody and cruel fighting was the norm in the 9 regions battlefield. It's done. On this day, Lin Sun woke up from his deduction and let out a long breath. His black eyes were bright, and his whole body was relaxed. In his heart, he had completely deduced a dense, vast, and incomparably mysterious city-protecting formation. This formation was based on the All-Side Stars formation, and Lin Sun had set up 4 main killing formations, namely, killing sky, punishing earth, destroying God, and exterminating spirit. Every single slaughter formation was covered in various Tao pattern diagrams, and every single diagram was branded with the energy of tens of thousands of Tao patterns. For example, the ultimate slaughter formation that possessed the strongest might was formed from 64 Tao marking formation diagrams and 8,400,000 Tao markings. As soon as it was activated, even a true saint would be easily annihilated. In addition to the 4 main killing formations, there were 8 defensive formations for defense. These 8 defensive formations would cover the 8 sides of the city wall, connecting the sky above and the earth below. After nearly 2 months of incessant deduction and meditation, Lin Sun finally perfected every detail of the formation, which made Lin Sun feel exhausted at the moment. No one knew how much effort and energy he had put in for this. It was all thanks to the fact that he had obtained the complete inheritance of the heavenly cycle star formation. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for him to create such a large-scale saint restriction that was both offensive and defensive in a short 2 months. Back then, on the bank of the Star Sea, Lin Sun only relied on the power of all-side stars formation to slaughter a group of kings, making blood flow thousands of miles and the sky dark. Even if a saint came to invade, He didn't dare to go further because he was afraid of the power of all-side stars formation. But the formation Lin Sun deduced now was born out of all-side stars formation, and it was better than the original, for it was devoted to the mystery of Taoist patterns he had learned all his life. It was no exaggeration to say that this formation was the most obscure and powerful one that Lin Sun had ever created in the field of spiritual tattoos since he started his cultivation. And this formation was named by Lin Sun as 4 extremes and 8 defense formations. Next, I have to consider refining formation plates, formation flags, and the magic materials needed for setting up the formation, Lin Sun thought. For such a formation, the quality of formation plates and formation flags should at least be at the level of holy treasures. Otherwise, the power of the formation couldn't be used at all. However, what Lin Sun didn't lack at present was holy treasures. He had collected dozens of holy treasures after killing a group of top saints before. Some of them could be refined again, inscribed with formation patterns and Taoist patterns, and used as formation plates and formation flags. Only the materials for setting up the formation were a little tricky. Not only did it require a large number of materials, but it also had extremely strict requirements on the quality. Brother Lin, Xiaohao came from a distance and asked, "How's the deduction of the formation going?" "I only need the materials for setting up the formation," Lin Sun said frankly. Xiaohao immediately laughed and said as if he had known it, "I'm here for this. Come with me." As he spoke, he led the way and flew into the distance. Lin Sun was surprised. Although he was confused, he still followed him. A quarter of an hour later, as the two of them teleported with all their might, they arrived in front of a huge and desolate canyon. "There is a secret realm here. I believe it can solve your problem." As he said, Xiaohao rushed into the canyon and suddenly disappeared out of thin air. Lin Sun was stunned. He couldn't help but have some expectations in his heart and followed him. Clatter, the canyon was covered with a layer of magical power. As soon as Lin Sun approached, he suddenly felt that the stars were moving and the time and space were overturned. When his vision was restored, Lin Sun's eyes were almost blinded by the overwhelming golden light. He narrowed his eyes slightly and spread his spiritual awareness. Then he was stunned. In this expanse of the heavens and the earth, golden grains of sand fluttered about and covered the sky. They were like golden stars that densely decorated the sky, and they were crystalline, translucent, brilliant, and gorgeous to the extreme. Looking carefully, each grain of sand was round like a pearl, the size of an almond, with golden divine luster flowing on it, giving people a sacred aura. Hollow golden sand. Lin Sun was shocked and recognized the origin of this rare magical material. For Buddhist practitioners, hollow golden sand was the purest and strongest Buddhist treasure in the world, a treasure for building the natal lotus throne. For swordsmen, it was a priceless treasure for refining their natal flying swords. A flying sword only needed to be mixed with some hollow golden sand, and its sharpness could be increased by 30%. For sages in the world, hollow golden sand was a kind of unparalleled magical material for refining holy treasures. Generally speaking, a handful of hollow golden sand was enough to meet the needs of refining holy treasures. But now, what appeared in front of Lin Sun was a piece of hollow golden sand, like a golden Milky Way, flowing between heaven and earth. "How is it?" Xiaohao came to Lin Sun and said with a smile. Lin Sun let out a long breath and said, "That's enough. It's enough. Brother Xiaohao, you've given me a big surprise." Xiaohao laughed heartily. "I'm also looking forward to the big surprise you can bring to our camp in the ancient desolation realm." When Lin Sun returned to the temporary camp, he immediately began to work. Half a month later, Lin Sun successfully refined 16 holy treasures that could be used as formation plates and 24 holy treasures that could be used as formation flags. It was not difficult for Lin Sun to inscribe Taoist patterns on the holy treasures. 1 month later, Lin Sun refined batch after batch of hollow golden sand, which amounted to about 50,000 caddies. These materials were more than enough to set up the 4 extremes and 8 defenses formation. It was also on this day that Xiaohao returned with injuries, which caused a commotion among the experts in the camp. They were all surprised and doubtful. The originally calm atmosphere was also covered with a gloomy cloud. Brother Lin, the foreign enemies of the 8 regions have guessed that we want to rebuild the city of Tao protectors here. From today on, I'm afraid there will be many enemies coming to attack us. Xiao Hao said in a low voice. Today, when he went out for a mission, he accidentally encountered 3 top figures of the 8 regions sneaking into the ancient desolation world. After a fierce battle, he killed 2 of them, and the last one escaped. He was also injured. It was not serious, but it was not light either. However, after this battle, Xiao Hao immediately judged that the foreign enemies of the 8 regions had already guessed their intention to rebuild the city of Tao protectors. Chapter 1563. Finally, a peerless saint showed up. A cold light flashed in Lin Sun's black eyes, and he said, "Don't worry. I didn't intend to hide the fact that I'm rebuilding the city of Tao from the beginning. However, I'm surprised that the enemies of the 8 regions didn't notice it until now." Xiao Hao and Ruo Wu were both stunned. "Brother Xiao Hao, you just need to rest and recuperate. I'll take care of the rest." Lin Sun didn't explain anything and said, "In addition, I'd like to trouble Miss Ruo Wu to spread a message for me." "What's the matter?" Ruo Wu was curious. "Tell them that I'll rebuild the city of Tao in 3 months." Lin Sun put his hands behind his back and said calmly, "What?" Ruo Wu and Xiao Hao were both shocked. "If the enemy knows about it, I just want them to know." Lin Sun said, "Of course, there's another purpose, which is to let the strong people of the ancient desolation realm and other regions hear the news and come and join us. The enemy is coming on a large scale. I'm afraid we can't resist them with our current strength." Xiao Hao frowned. Lin Sun said with a smile, "Just wait and see." Xiao Hao and Ruo Wu looked at each other, wondering why Lin Sun was so confident. But in the end, they didn't ask any more questions. If Lin Sun wanted to tell them, he would have done it long ago. But in this way, both of them were a little curious about what method Lin Sun would use to resist the foreign enemies. From this day on, Lin Sun left the camp frequently. Over a black ocean, Lin Sun's dark eyes were deep. The power of wind-mocking eyes was running in his pupils, scanning and exploring the depths of the ocean. After a while, he suddenly stretched out his hand and grabbed something. Boom! The sea suddenly rolled, and the waves were like thunder. A spiritual vein as thick as a house, thousands of meters long, was drawn out. It looked like a huge python dragon. Dazzling divine luster filled the air. Pure and heavy spiritual chi evaporated and turned into a rain of light, looking extremely sacred. This was a rare saint-level spiritual vein, mixed with a strong divine aura, which was extremely valuable. If it was in the outside world, a spirit vein like this would be enough to build an excellent grotto heaven. Clatter, Lin Sun waved his sleeves, put away the spiritual vein, and floated away. It was a sandy beach with jagged rocks of strange shapes. Rumble. A huge crack was cut open on the ground by swordlight. Lin Sun flashed into the depths of the crack. 1,000 zhang. 3,000 zhang. When Lin Sun reached the depth of 90,000 meters, a dazzling red glow came into his sight. This was another saint-level spirit vein of excellent quality. The 9 regions battlefield was an extremely mysterious world built between the 9 realms. It was dotted with many secret realms and small worlds that contained many rare treasures in the outside world. Even the quality of the spirit vein was shockingly high. With the help of wind-mocking eyes, Lin Sun collected hundreds of spiritual veins in less than 20 days. Some spirit veins were over 10 kilometers long and completely gorgeous, and the aura of divinity dyed the surrounding space gorgeous. Some of them were only more than 30 meters long, but the purity of their spiritual energy was enough to shock a peerless saint like Lin Sun. These spirit veins were the key to providing energy for the 4 Absolutes, 8 Imperials sacred formation. Late at night, in the temporary camp, Lin Sun finished everything at hand and stood alone in the night, looking into the distance. Nearly half a year had passed since he entered this place. During this half a year, Lin Sun spent most of his time deducing formations, refining formation plates, and collecting formation materials. But it was all worth it. Just like now, he just needed to gather enough materials to start rebuilding the city of Tao protectors. Standing alone in the night for a long time, Lin Sun murmured in his heart, "Everything is ready. Just wait for the wind." At the same time, the news that Lin Sun wanted to rebuild the city of Tao spread throughout the entire 9 regions battlefield under Ruo Wu's intentional promotion. For a time, it shocked the world. This guy's announcing this so openly. Isn't he worried about being suppressed by the enemies of the 8 regions? Heavenly Fire World. In a secret realm in the depths of a remote mountain, Yi Chun, who had just returned, also brought back the news, which made laughing at the heavens frown. Laughing at the heavens, and Yi Chun met when they entered the 9 regions battlefield, and they hid together in Heavenly Fire World. Do you think Lin Sun is that kind of brainless person? Yi Chun's eyes were burning. I think it's time for us to leave. I've been a coward for nearly a year. If I stay here any longer, I'll be depressed. Laughing at the heavens was silent for a long time. Then he took a deep breath and said, "Then let's go. I've had enough of him." The two looked at each other and smiled. At the same time, most of the surviving experts in the ancient desolation realm in the 9 regions battlefield were tempted when they heard the news. Lin Sun, he was a legendary figure in the ancient desolation realm. Since he dared to do this, he must have something to rely on. No one thought that Lin Sun would overestimate himself. This was the prestige and reputation of Lin Sun, which was built by the killing and bloody battles he had gone through in the past years. Let's go. Even if there are many dangers along the way, I have to return to the ancient desolation realm and meet with the others. Someone gritted his teeth. After hiding for so long, I finally heard such good news. I can't stay indifferent even if I have to pay with my life. Someone's eyes were firm. Such things began to happen in different regions. The experts in the ancient desolation realm who had been hiding and enduring all began to take action. Their goal was to go to the ancient desolation realm. But at the same time, many experts in the ancient desolation realm chose to stay on the sidelines after hearing the news. Lin Sun was indeed strong and courageous, but this was the 9 regions battlefield after all. How could the enemies of the 8 regions sit still after hearing the news? There is no doubt that the ancient desolation realm had become the center of the storm. It was destined to be targeted long ago, and unimaginable killings would break out at any time. It was too unwise to go there at this time. Unless, if Lin Sun could really rebuild the city of Path and resist the attacks of the enemies of the 8 regions, perhaps it would be time for him to return to the ancient desolation realm. However, these experts who decided to stay on the sidelines all thought that the possibility was very slim. The reason was very simple. The strength and foundation of the enemies of the 8 regions were too terrifying. Just thinking about it made people feel desperate. This was a matter of personal choice. Although they were on the same side, not every expert in the ancient desolation realm was willing to support Lin Sun at the risk of their lives. The North Underworld realm. In the palace on the Fuyao Sea. This little bastard is really arrogant. Doesn't he know how the ancient desolation realm's city of Tao protection was conquered in the previous 2 battles between the 9 realms? An old voice laughed, full of mockery. According to the records left by the ancestors of my clan, the city of Path Protector was conquered in the first battle of the 9 regions. A total of 300,000 two-legged sheep were slaughtered. At that time, blood rained from the sky for 10 days. In the second battle of the 9 regions, the ancient desolation realm wanted to rebuild the city of Path Protector, but it was destroyed by the allied forces of the 8 regions on the way. 90,000 people were slaughtered on the spot. Now, Lin Sun still dares to do this. Isn't he afraid of repeating the same mistake? He's not courting death. I'm afraid he wants to kill all the two-legged sheep in the ancient desolation realm. Laughter rang out in the hall. When they heard that Lin Sun was going to rebuild the city of Path Protector, their first reaction was that this kid must have a screw loose. Even if he wanted to die, he didn't have to be so anxious. Then there were all sorts of sounds of contempt, ridicule, and laughter. "Young master, as long as you give the order, I will bring people to flatten the ancient wasteland world. A voice that sounded like a great bell rang out. At that moment, all the people in the hall looked at Kuan Xiaoyu. Kuan Xiaoyu picked up his cup and took a sip of the rich and fragrant liquor. Only then did he smile. His eyes were deep as he spoke slowly. If the heavens want him dead, then he'll definitely go mad. That kid said that he'll rebuild the city of Tao Protectors in the ancient desolation dimension 3 months from now. Since it's like that, then I'll naturally give him a lethal blow at that time. After a pause, he changed the topic and said, however, we can't just rely on the Northern Darkstar Ancient Realm. Young Master, are you saying that you want to pull in the forces of the other 7 regions to attack together? Someone asked. Not bad. Kuan Xiaoyu said calmly. Kill the ancient desolation first, then we can compete. The 8 regions have always been united against the ancient desolation region. We advance and retreat together, so we can't leave them out of this. Next, I'll personally write letters to inform their leaders one by one. After that, he raised his head and drank the wine in his cup. It had been nearly a year since the opening of a 9-region battlefield. It was time to complete the goal of killing the ancient desolation first. Soon, the letters written by Kuan Xiaoyu were sent to the leaders of the other realms. The day Lin Sun rebuilds the city of Tao Protectors will be the day of his destruction. At that time, I hope that everyone will send 10 peerless sages to lead an army of 30,000 to the ancient desolation dimension. After receiving the news, Jian Qingshun, the first descendant of the Sky Sword Pavilion, only thought for a moment and agreed. Agreed. Zhu Inkong, the imperial prince of the Candle Dragon bloodline, also agreed. 10 peerless sages and 30,000 soldiers were only equivalent to 1/10 of the strength of the ancient desolation dimension. That's how it should be. Huahong Xiao, the successor of the Divine Path sect in the East Mulberry Ancient Domain, said with a sonorous voice and astonishing killing intent. Qi Wushu of the Jiuli Ancient Domain, Lai Qian of the Heavenfire Ancient Domain, and Shurpohe of the Starfiend Ancient Domain also agreed. No matter which force it was, they naturally could not tolerate the ancient desolation dimension rebuilding the city of Tao Protectors. However, when the news reached the Blood Demon realm, to everyone's surprise, Xue Qingyi rejected it without even thinking about it. Tell Kuan Xiaoyu that the Blood Demon Ancient Domain is not interested in intervening in this matter for the time being. This decision had not yet spread, but it had already caused a storm in the Blood Demon realm. The experts from the various forces of the Blood Demon Ancient Domain all felt depressed. Why did Xue Qingyi become more and more timid? Chapter 1564. Voices of dissatisfaction, anger, and grievance began to ring out from different clans in the Blood Demon realm. Who could forget the guy called Lin Sun, who had slaughtered his way from the depths of the god refining forest all the way to the city of Tao Protectors? Who could forget the guy who had surrounded an entire city all by himself and destroyed the reputation of the Blood Demon Ancient Region? But Xue Qingyi, not only did he not seek revenge, he chose to endure. He even withdrew all the forces that the Blood Demon Ancient Region had sent to the ancient Wasteland realm. This matter was shameful enough to make him the laughingstock of the other realms. But now, faced with the best opportunity to destroy the ancient Wasteland realm, Xue Qingyi actually chose to endure. He did not even intend to send a single soldier. Was he still one of the 8 skills of Green Hell? Was he the leader of the younger generation of the Blood Demon Ancient Region? Why was he so cowardly? But no matter how angry they were, no one could change Xue Qingyi's mind. In the Blood Demon realm, Xue Qingyi was the one who had the final say. No matter how aggrieved and dissatisfied the experts of the Blood Demon Ancient Region were, they could only endure it. Each realm will send out 10 peerless sages and 30,000 soldiers. In total, there will be 70 peerless sages and 210,000 soldiers. If Lin Sun can't hold on, the experts of the ancient Wasteland realm will definitely be wiped out. But what if Lin Sun can hold on? Xue Qingyi stood alone in the hall with a cold smile on his handsome face. Last time, a total of 30 peak saints of our Blood Demon Ancient Region were killed by Lin Sun. This time, even if Lin Sun's blade is broken, he'll definitely drag a group of people down with him. Why should our blood demon ancient region make such a pointless sacrifice? Let's just watch the show. No matter who wins or loses, it will only benefit the blood demon ancient region. Xueqingyi took a deep breath. Her depressed emotions returned to normal, and she was completely unperturbed. When Xueqingyi's decision reached Kuan Xiaoyu's ears, he could not help but be stunned. Since when did this guy become so tolerant? When the news spread to the other 7 realms, it caused a lot of laughter. Could it be that Xueqingyi is terrified by that little bastard Lin Sun? I think it's time for Xueqingyi to be removed from the 8 absolutes of green hell. He has no guts at all. Isn't Xueqingyi worried that her prestige will be damaged? How shameful! What is he thinking? Amidst the heated discussions, the blood demon ancient region became the target of ridicule for the other 7 regions. In any case, the news that 7 of the 8 regions would launch an attack on the day Lin Sun built the city still caused a sensation in the 9-region battlefield. Amidst the changing winds and clouds, the somber atmosphere of a storm. During this period of time, many experts from the ancient Desolation Realm came from all directions to the temporary campsite of the ancient Desolation Realm. The temporary camp suddenly became lively. Lin Sun also met many familiar old friends, such as Laughing at the Heavens, Ye Chun, Ji Xingyao, Mi Hengzhen, and so on. However, Zhao Jingxian was not there. Lin Sun sighed in his heart because of this, and he decided that he would head over to investigate and find out about Zhao Jingxian once the city of Dao Protectors was completed. As time went by, about 50,000 experts from the ancient Desolation Realm had gathered in the temporary camp. Most of them were ordinary Immortal Realm kings. There were also some true saints, but in terms of overall combat strength, the ancient Desolation Realm was indeed much weaker than the other 8 regions. Even among those top figures, only Lin Sun, Xiao Hao, and Ruo Wu were at the peak of the Saint Realm. It could be said that in terms of overall strength, the ancient Desolation Realm was not qualified to fight against any of the other 8 regions. In particular, when the news that the 7 regions would join forces to attack on the day Lin Sun built the city spread, the originally lively atmosphere in the huge temporary camp became depressing. Even though many experts from the ancient Desolation Realm had made up their minds to go in and out with Lin Sun, they still felt worried under such circumstances. The disparity was too great. They could not even see much hope. Even experts like Ruo Wu and Xiao Hao, who had great confidence in Lin Sun, could not help but feel gloomy. If they could build the city successfully, it would be worth it no matter how many sacrifices they had to make. But what if they failed? That would definitely lead to the tragic outcome of the entire army being wiped out and captured in one fell swoop. As the time of building the city drew closer, the atmosphere in the camp became more and more depressing. Many experts even felt uneasy. It was even to the extent that many people couldn't help but feel regret, and they blamed themselves for rashly coming here on impulse. Seeing this situation, Ruo Wu and Xiao Hao couldn't help but frown. The enemy was still coming, but their fighting spirit was shaken, which was not good. I don't know what Lin Sun is thinking. Ruo Wu couldn't help murmuring. These days, Lin Sun had been acting as if nothing had happened. Every day, he carried the spiritual veins and placed them in different areas nearby, laying and arranging the hollow golden sand that had been refined long ago. He was completely indifferent to the situation in the camp. The calmer and more casual he is, the more confident I'll be. If he's like the others, filled with worry and sighing, then I don't think there's any need to rebuild the city of Dao Protectors at all. We can just admit defeat, Xiao Hao said with a smile. How can you still laugh? Ruo Wu glanced at him. Xiao Hao sneered. I'm just finding joy in sorrow. Finding joy in sorrow. Why do I feel that you have nothing better to do? A laugh sounded. Lin Sun had come from afar. Although he looked relaxed, he could not hide the exhaustion between his eyebrows. These days, he was the only one who had been setting up the formation. It had cost him a lot of energy and effort just to inscribe the vast Taoist pattern formation. Others could not help with such a large sacred formation at all. and no mistakes could be tolerated. Lin Sun could only work hard alone. The formation is done? Xiao Hao's eyes lit up. Lin Sun nodded. Now, there's one more thing to do. What is it? If you want to build a city, it must be unbreakable. The corpses and blood of the enemies are just decorations. To support the foundation of a city, we need divine materials. Lin Sun said, So, I need your help to refine a batch of hollow golden sand. The more, the better. It's better to have enough to build a city. Xiao Hao and Ruo Wu gasped. Build a city with hollow golden sand? It was a crazy idea. Yes, if you don't want to do it, you should at least build an immortal city that no one can break in the 9 regions battlefield. Lin Sun's black eyes were shining, and he said firmly, In this way, in the future, even if the Battle of the 9 regions breaks out again, the strong in the ancient desolation region will not have to hide anymore. With the power of this city, we can be invincible. Both Xiao Hao and Ruo Wu were moved. Only now did they understand that Lin Sun's intention of building a city was bigger and more far-reaching than they had imagined. After a while, Xiao Hao joked, I thought you really planned to build a city with the corpses of the enemies. It turns out that you have other ideas. Lin Sun smiled. Don't worry. The corpses of the enemies will definitely be piled up on every brick of the city. In the following period of time, Xiao Hao and Ruo Wu were also busy. One of them went to collect hollow golden sand, and the other led a group of true sages to refine piles of hollow golden sand into huge bricks. Then, on each brick, Lin Sun engraved a different pattern of Tao. As for the other strong in the camp, they also divided the work and divided the corpses and blood in the corpse mountain and blood pool, refined them, and polished them into materials for building the city. The day of building the city was getting closer and closer. On this day, Xiao Hao hurried back to the temporary camp and brought back a piece of news. The forces of the 7 territories have arrived at the border of the ancient desolation realm. For a moment, the atmosphere in the temporary camp was unprecedentedly solemn. Everyone's heart was tight. Who wouldn't be nervous before a storm? Only Lin Sun was a little surprised. Why is there no power of the blood demon ancient region? Xue Qingyi decided to bear with it. Now, he has become a laughingstock in the 8 regions, and his personal reputation has fallen to the bottom. Xiao Hao's expression was strange. This guy's a smart guy. Lin Sun was stunned, and then he commented. As he spoke, Lin Sun flew into the sky and stood under the sky. He spread his spiritual awareness and looked around. With the temporary camp as the center, within a radius of 100 miles, there was a tall golden stone mountain at regular intervals. These mountains were all made of huge stone bricks made of hollow gold sand. For this, Xiao Hao almost emptied the hollow gold sand distributed in the secret realm. Below this area, where no one could see, were Dao rune formation diagrams. The patterns were engraved on the materials of the formation. Below the patterns, there were huge saint-level spiritual veins intertwined like coiling dragons. Lin Sun, who had a panoramic view of all this, couldn't help but feel excited. When building the city, blood should be used as a sacrifice 10 days later. There were only 7 days left before the day of building the city. On this day, Xiao Hao, who had been patrolling outside, returned to the temporary camp at full speed. Get ready, everyone. The enemy is coming. Xiao Hao's shout was like thunder, resounding over the temporary camp. For a moment, all the strong in the camp were stiff, and their faces changed. The enemy had come 7 days in advance. Swish! At the same time, Lin Sun's figure rose into the sky. His moon-white robe fluttered. His handsome face was full of spirit, and his dark eyes were deep and bright. I knew they wouldn't foolishly wait for the day of building the city. His cold voice resounded through the camp, making everyone stunned. So Lin Sun had expected this? Thinking of this, all the strong felt inexplicably relaxed, as if they were infected by the confidence in Lin Sun's words. Brother Lin, the war is coming. How sure are you? Someone couldn't help shouting. Chapter 1565. Lin Sun looked down at the tens of thousands of figures in the camp, looking at their nervous and expectant faces. Inexplicably, He felt a sense of pride and said, "You don't need to participate in this battle. Just watch it." His voice was loud and clear, stirring the wilderness. Xiao Hao and Ruo Wu were both stunned. Everyone present was also stunned. Was Lin going to fight against the army of the 7 regions alone? For a moment, there was a dead silence in the huge camp. Everyone looked incredulous. Before, they had all made up their minds to live and die together with the camp, and they had taken life and death lightly. Who would have thought that Lin Sun would fight alone? This was too unexpected, completely out of everyone's expectations. Brother Lin, Xiao Hao couldn't help saying. Lin Sun put his hand behind his back and said with a smile, "Brother Xiao Hao, you just need to stay in the camp and watch the battle." No matter if it was his expression, words, or actions, they were all calm and composed. If it wasn't for this, Xiao Hao, Ruo Wu, and the others would probably suspect that he had gone mad. There were 70 top sages and 210,000 soldiers. Looking at the battlefield of the 9 regions, who dared to threaten to fight against the army of the 7 regions alone like Lin Sun did? This was no longer daring. It was simply insanity. In the temporary camp, everyone was excited. Where did Lin Sun's confidence come from? "Well, I'll accompany you." Xiao Hao took a deep breath and said firmly, "Don't force yourself. This is the camp of the ancient desolation realm. We won't just watch you fight with your life." Ruo Wu said seriously. All the people in the camp nodded. The enemy came faster than he had expected. Whoosh! Suddenly, from all directions of the temporary camp, there was a burst of horns, mixed with the roar of war drums. The sky and the earth roared, and the wind and clouds changed. A terrifying, murderous aura that was visible to the naked eye quickly spread out like dark clouds, covering the sky above the temporary camp and making it dark. The campsite was deathly silent, and everyone felt suffocated. The boundless bugle horn and rumbling drum sounds were like enormous hammers that fiercely smashed into their hearts, causing everyone's expression to change. The enemy had yet to arrive, but the overwhelming killing intent had already arrived. At this moment, no matter how much confidence they had in Lin Sun, the tens of thousands of experts from the ancient desolation realm in the camp all felt an unprecedented pressure. Not long after, the earth trembled, sand and pebbles flew, and the killing intent was like a raging storm, completely enveloping the temporary camp. In that instant, it was as if doomsday had arrived. Even Xiao Hao and Ruo Wu were startled. They rose into the air and glanced at the surroundings. Waves of smoke appeared on the distant horizon, turning into terrifying black clouds that covered heaven and earth. War drums rumbled, ringing through the world. There were boundless bugle horns, and an austere aura engulfed everything. If one were to take a closer look, they would see a dense crowd of people approaching from all directions like a black tide. Dark clouds loomed over the city, threatening to destroy it. One by one, the dignified figures of the 7 regions led the army of the 7 regions and surged toward the temporary camp from different directions. The peerless sages were like rulers, not bothering to conceal their terrifying auras as they charged forward. Behind them were tens of thousands of troops, including thousands of true sages and innumerable peerless kings of the longevity tribulation realm. When they gathered together, only the aura they emitted turned into a terrible vision, raging between heaven and earth. This was not an army of ordinary people, nor was it an army of ordinary practitioners. Instead, it was an army led by peak sages and formed by many true sages and longevity tribulation monarchs. Such a scene was enough to make anyone desperate in the ancient desolation realm. Xiao Hao and Ruo Wu looked at each other with a serious expression and a chill in their hearts. There were only 70 peerless sages, which was an extremely terrifying number. Not to mention that there were 210,000 sages in the army, and the weakest among them was a king of the longevity tribulation realm. Could Lin Sun fight this battle alone? Xiao Hao and Ruo Wu were shaken for a moment, and their eyes simultaneously looked at Lin Sun, who was standing in the sky in front of the camp in the distance. Lin Sun still stood there without moving in the slightest, and he was like an immovable rock. Only an azure-skinned wine gourd had appeared in his hand, and he was drinking wine with a leisurely bearing. He seemed as if he had turned a blind eye to the battle that was about to arrive. "Who is the little bastard named Lin's son? Come out!" Suddenly, a loud roar resounded in the sky, and a tall figure like a demon god soared into the sky. It was a powerful man with hair as black as ink, more than 30 meters tall, and circles of vortex ripples appeared all over his body. What made people tremble was that behind his head there was a shadow of a divine wheel, which was vast and undulating, and a huge koan was stirring up waves. Koan Bashio. He was a peerless sage of the Koan family, an imperial family in the northern underworld ancient domain, and also one of the leaders of the coalition army of the Seven Regions. It was just a loud roar, but it resounded in everyone's heart like a clap of thunder, and made all the overlords in the ancient desolation realm pale. Such power was simply too terrifying. Umph! A cold light flashed in Xiaohao's eyes, and he was about to take action. But at this moment, Lin Sun gently flicked his fingers and suddenly stepped forward. With a rumble, an indescribably terrifying power rose from his body. At that moment, his black hair fluttered in the wind, and a brilliant light flowed around his body, crushing and destroying the dark clouds and murderous chi that covered the sky. And the oppressive power of Kuan Bachio was also destroyed in an instant. His face changed slightly, and a fierce light flashed in his eyes. At the same time, all the people in the temporary camp felt relaxed, and all the depression and discomfort were swept away. When they looked at Lin Sun again, there was a touch of fanaticism in their eyes. It was also at this moment that they finally saw with their own eyes how powerful Lin Sun, who had set foot on the peak of the Saint Realm, was. Outside the temporary camp, the army of the Seven Regions, which was pressing in from all directions, also fixed their eyes on Lin Sun, who stood high in the void. It was also the first time they saw this young man who had killed so many people in the Blood Demon world and besieged an entire city by himself. Now that they saw it, he was indeed extraordinary. The saint from the Seven Regions couldn't help but be surprised, and they realized that the rumors were not exaggerated. It was unexpected that such a dazzling figure could emerge from the ancient desolation. But that was all. They came prepared this time. A total of 70 saints attacked, and none of the 8 invincibles of green destiny dared to face them head-on. In the sky, Lin Sun put away the green wine gourd in his hand, glanced at Kuan Bachio, and said, "Because of this sentence, you will die a horrible death." His indifferent voice, with undisguised contempt, resounded in the vast space, and everyone was stunned. The army was pressing down on the city, and the ancient desolation was at a dead end. How dare this boy be so arrogant? "Ha ha, Kuan Bachio, did you hear that? This little bastard is not going to let you go." Someone laughed. Then, a burst of laughter filled the air. Someone mocked and pretended to be surprised. "Didn't you say that you're going to rebuild the city of Tao Protectors? Why does it look so desolate?" Someone else laughed. "That's not right. Look, those golden mountains are clearly the bricks they used to build the city. Of course, they're just piles of stones." The allied army of the Seven Regions seemed fearless and calm. Their faces were filled with hideous, cruel, and cold smiles. In the beginning, they thought that there was already a city here, but when they arrived, there wasn't even a city wall to protect them from the wind and rain. There were only tens of thousands of two-legged sheep from the ancient desolation region gathered together like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. This made them even more calm, fearless, and unbridled. Damn it, these bastards are still as arrogant as ever. In the temporary camp, the crowd was enraged. Their expressions were ugly, and they gritted their teeth in anger. "Everyone, don't underestimate these two-legged sheep. They might have set up many restrictions here." An old man in a Taoist robe with a youthful face and white hair spoke up. Lin Sun put away his smile, glanced at the old man, and said indifferently, "You're right. I've set up a forbidden formation within a radius of 100 miles. Well, the place where you're standing now is already in the forbidden formation." Everyone was shocked when they heard that. Kuanbachio and the other peerless saints' eyes flickered. They spread out their divine senses, but they couldn't sense any aura from the restriction formation. You're just playing tricks, someone said proudly. So what if there's a restriction formation? Do you think it can stop our attacks? The others sneered as well. That's right. So what if there's a restriction formation? We could just break it with force. Stop your attacks. Lin Sun showed a hint of mockery. Ignorant. When I set up the formation, I only thought about how to kill you. I never thought about stopping you. Kill us? Kuanbachio was so angry that he laughed as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. Tens of thousands of soldiers from the 7 regions also laughed. Lin Sun was really arrogant to the point that he didn't know what was good for him. Stop talking nonsense with him. Let's do it. Someone shouted. Let's kill this guy together. The rest of you, go and flatten this place. Remember, don't let a 2-legged sheep go. Someone said with a sonorous voice and a murderous intent. Boom! At this moment, unparalleled murderous intent rumbled between heaven and earth. Heaven and earth surged and the weather changed. The 7 regions' armies all moved. The terrifying aura alone made the cultivators from the ancient desolation realm stiff all over and stinging their skin. If they faced it head-on, it would be no different from hitting a stone with an egg. At the same time, Lin Sun also sensed that dozens of auras belonging to peerless saints had locked onto him from all directions. Attack! Kuanbachio shouted like thunder. Chapter 1566. Between heaven and earth, the horns were loud and the war drums were thunderous. The 210,000 soldiers of the 7 regions attacked from different directions in different areas. Treasures and Tao arts that covered the heavens and the earth flashed up, and they developed into various terrifying phenomena as they charged towards the temporary campsite. It was dense, just like a storm. The void was chaotic, the earth was shaking, and the world lost its color at this moment, submerged by the gorgeous and magnificent light. That scene was like the end of the world. It was too horrible. Even Xiaohao and Ruowu couldn't help but gasp when they saw this scene, and their faces changed slightly. And Kuanbachio and other top sages had already taken action before such a full-scale attack. They moved horizontally in the void and rushed up to kill. Their target was Lin Sun. The situation had suddenly become extremely dangerous. However, at the same time, Lin Sun waved his sleeves, and a divine rainbow swept up. There were a total of 24 formation flags refined by a group of holy treasures. They swept into different directions of the temporary camp and disappeared in a flash. In the depths of the ground where no one could see, a dazzling light suddenly emerged from the Taoist pattern formation that had been covered, as if waking up from silence. Boom, 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 boom. In a flash, the world was turned upside down. 8 defensive formations rose from the ground, and the dense and vast Taoist pattern formation spread out like a vast ocean, covering the huge temporary camp. Looking from a distance, it was like a magnificent giant eggshell inverted on the temporary camp, reflecting a dazzling golden light curtain. In a light curtain, the Taoist pattern, like the light rain of flying immortals, flowed and evolved into illusory phantoms of gods. Some of them meditated solemnly, some recited scriptures, and some wandered around with halberds in their hands. It was just like a kingdom of gods, brilliant, sacred, boundless, and unshakable. 8 defense formation. At the same time, Lin Sun made a gesture with his fingers, and 4 holy treasures refined as formation plates swept out and disappeared in the void. Rise! Lin Sun shouted like thunder in spring. Boom! A grand formation that was formed from dazzling starlight suddenly surged into appearance 300 m away from where his figure stood. As soon as it appeared, it was like an expanse of the starry sky had appeared in the world, and it emanated a boundless, cold, and vast feeling of terror. Absolute sky of the 4-terminal formation. Lin Sun completed a series of movements in an instant, incredibly fast. At this moment, the group of sages had arrived. Boom! Deafening and terrifying sounds of collision resounded out in the sky, and it was simply like numerous volcanoes had erupted at the same time. Blazing rays of light shot out, while a rain of light raged, and it caused this entire expanse of the heavens and the earth to shake. What? Screams rang out. As expected, they had already set up a great formation. In the distance, the eyes of the group of peak saints flickered. They were bewildered and somewhat surprised. In their field of vision, the place where Lin stood was like a starry sky, with rivers of stars flowing, drifting and twinkling, drawing mysterious and obscure trajectories. Previously, all of their attacks had been dissolved when they collided with the formation. On the other hand, Lin Sun stood towering in the starry sky with his black hair fluttering in the wind, and his entire body bathed in brilliant starlight. He was pure and ethereal, and he simply seemed like a son of the stars. Rumble. Following that, a series of intensive and ear-piercing collisions rang out, covering the sky and earth, surging in all directions and causing the earth to crack. Then, exclamations rang out incessantly. The temporary camp was covered by a layer of golden light curtain, and the Taoist pattern formation turned into the phantoms of various deities sitting in it, like a kingdom of deities. The terrifying attacks whizzing in from all directions were all blocked by the golden light curtain, causing collisions, but they could not shake it at all. The army of the 7 regions was restless and couldn't believe it. They had thought that this attack alone would be enough to destroy the temporary camp. But who would have thought that such a shocking change would happen? What kind of formation was that? How could it block the attack of their army? In the temporary camp, Xiao Hao and Ruo Wu's tense hearts both relaxed at this moment, feeling as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. Just now, they almost couldn't help but attack. Laughing in the heavens, yet Chun, Yu Jianming, and the other experts of the ancient desolation realm also cheered at this moment. No one knew how nervous, perturbed, and depressed they were before. They all thought that under this attack, it was very likely that they would suffer heavy casualties. But who would have thought that a golden light curtain that covered the sky and the sun appeared, protecting all of them in it, all of them unscathed? This made them all feel as if they were in a dream. When they looked at Lin Sun's figure standing in the void again, they couldn't help showing excitement, fanaticism, and excitement. These days, they all knew that Lin Sun had been busy setting up the formation day and night, but no one knew how powerful the means he had set up was. But now they understood. Buzz, the golden light curtain emitted sacred light, brilliant and vast, like the most unbreakable fortress in the world, enveloping the temporary camp. And at the forefront, the heavenly slaying formation turned into the image of the starry sky, reflecting around Lin's sun, emitting obscure and palpitating fluctuations. All of this surprised and caught the army of the 7 regions off guard, and their faces were uncertain. It's just a big formation. We can just destroy it. Kuan-Ba, Chiu, snorted coldly. It's not like we haven't trampled this place in the past battles of the 9 regions. Some people laughed grimly. So what if there was a big formation to stop them? 72 top sages and 210,000 soldiers. How could they just be decoration? Just trample it. Lin Sun's black eyes were cold, and his expression was calm. He said indifferently, "Didn't you just ask why we didn't build a city? Because we lack materials. Now that you are here, we can finally start." Kuan-Ba Chiu sneered. This guy couldn't even protect himself, and he still wanted to build a city? This was simply insane and completely insane. Attack! A group of top sages roared. Boom! The vast sound of horns and fierce war drums resounded between heaven and earth again. The army of the 7 regions besieged with all their strength, attacking like the wind. Each and every one of them was like a fierce devil, and they didn't hesitate to attack. Splendid and magnificent Taoism, all kinds of treasures, as if they didn't cost anything. They poured down densely between heaven and earth. The scene was extremely chaotic and terrifying. Even though they knew that there was a big formation to protect them, the experts of the ancient desolation realm couldn't help but feel nervous. This kind of attack was too horrible, like a flood that could easily crush and wipe them out. However, when they saw that these attacks, no matter how fierce and terrible they were were all blocked by the big formation without exception. The experts of the ancient desolation realm gradually relaxed. On the other hand, the faces of the army of the seven regions were gloomy and exasperated. A big formation couldn't be shaken? They didn't believe it. For a moment, their attacks became more and more fierce. Many true sages and kings of the longevity tribulation all used their real strength. However, I didn't notice that deep under their feet, there were many Tau path diagrams running quietly. Go to hell. High in the sky, a group of top sages had already attacked the killing formation of heavens in front of Lin's sun. Their attacks were undoubtedly more terrifying. The power of Taoism they used and the power of the holy treasures they controlled could be said to be extremely terrifying. Under such attacks, the killing formation of heavens tumbled and the stars around it flickered chaotically. Little bastard, didn't you say that you suppressed the city of Tao protectors in the blood demon ancient realm all by yourself? Why don't you come out now? Someone laughed sarcastically. I just don't want you to miss the wonderful scene when I build the city. Lin Sun's voice was indifferent. Ha ha, boy, are you crazy? The big formation in front of you is about to be broken, and you still want to build a city? Many people were amused and burst into laughter. It was indeed ridiculous. With the army in front of them, did this guy think he could stop them with these formations? At this moment, even the experts of the ancient desolation realm in the temporary camp were shocked. How could Lin Sun still have the mood to think about building a city at this time? It's almost time. Open your eyes and watch. But Lin Sun suddenly took a step forward, pointed to the distance, and gently spat out a word from his lips. Rise. Boom. 30 li away, there was a densely packed enemy army entrenched in the ground. But under their feet, runes suddenly rushed out and filled the sky. They were as dazzling as great suns as they rose from the ground. In the blink of an eye, the Earth Punishment Formation appeared in the sky. At the instant it circulated, a myriad of divine swords that were condensed from talisman markings shot out in a dense array that covered the heavens and the earth. Oh no! Dodge! Screams resounded, but it was too late to dodge. In that area, all the enemies who were covered by the formation suffered a fatal blow. Puff! 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 Group after group of figures were slaughtered by the peerlessly swift and fierce sword chi like weeds, causing fresh blood and shattered corpses to spray into the surroundings. In an instant, at least hundreds of people were killed, including several true sages who didn't have time to move. Rumble. When the Earth Execution Killing Formation operated at full power, it was as if there were countless divine swords whistling out in a frenzy. They slaughtered the universe with an unparalleled might. The enemies in the nearby area were completely covered by it. They didn't even have time to dodge. They were swept, crushed, and killed by the torrent of sword chi. The horrible power caused chaos in the field. Exclamations, screams, roars, and shrill screams were heard incessantly. In an instant, the top sages who were bombarding the heavenly slaying formation all narrowed their eyes and changed their faces slightly. In the vicinity of this area, there was actually a boundlessly terrifying killing formation lying in ambush. But from the beginning to the end, they didn't notice it at all. In the temporary camp, the overmatches of the ancient desolation realm also gasped and widened their eyes in excitement. Was this the real killing move of Lin Sun's ambush? It was too fierce. In just a few breaths, more than 3,000 enemies had been killed by the Earth Punishment Formation. Bones and blood were piled up on the ground, and the smell of blood rose to the sky. Some overmatches who were lucky enough to escape the killing formation turned pale with fright, as if they had just escaped from death. The scene just now was undoubtedly too bloody and horrible. Chapter 1567. The bloody and domineering scene caused the atmosphere in the surroundings to become strangely silent. At this time, Lin Sun said indifferently, "Everyone, please take a look. The bones and blood will become part of the materials for building the city." Speaking of this, Lin Sun added coldly, "Of course, this is only a small part, far from enough." Kuan Bachio and the other top sages looked gloomy. However, it was only a few thousand casualties. Among the strong who died, there were only a few true saints. This loss could not affect them much. Everyone sent a group of people to resist and bombard that formation. Someone shouted. The Earth Punishment Formation in the distance was still running, shooting out thousands of divine swords in all directions. It was fierce and domineering, causing harm to the strong in the 7 regions nearby. Immediately, more than a dozen top sages went out to suppress and bombard the power of the Earth Punishment Formation. Everyone, this is just the beginning. Even if it is to break the formation, there is no need to hurry. Lin Sun looked calm and not surprised at all, as if everything was within his expectations. Humph! Little bastard, you will die soon. How dare you bark? Kuan Ba Chio shouted. Like the other top sages, they took out all kinds of holy treasures and bombarded the heaven-killing formation. Lin Sun pointed in another direction and said, I said, the show has just begun. Watch. As soon as he finished speaking, there was a thunder in the distance. Boom, under the ground, as if an earth dragon was turning over. Endless bright runes suddenly emerged, forming a large formation in the void. Within the grand formation, dazzling lightning raged in the sky, while arcs of lightning flowed about, and they were dense like a violent waterfall of lightning as they struck down. Purple, red, blue, cyan, black, silver, all kinds of thunder and lightning were full of the power to destroy the world, enough to kill ghosts and gods. God-killing formation. As soon as it appeared, thunder and lightning struck, and hundreds of strong people could not dodge in time. They were killed in an instant and turned into ashes. The strong and domineering murderous aura made everyone exclaim. The most terrifying thing was that those lightning bolts were like chains. They extended outwards and danced wildly between heaven and earth. They were sparkling and dazzling, yet they could even blast a true saint to death. In a temporary camp, the atmosphere was boiling. Hiding in the 8 defenses formation, the group of experts of the ancient desolation realm witnessed this destructive scene with their own eyes. They were all excited, their blood boiling. They could predict that Lin Sun's means must be more than that, but they didn't expect that the power of this formation was so shocking. God damn it! We were tricked by that bastard. Shrill screams continued to ring out. The expressions of Kuan Ba Chio and the other peerless sages changed when they saw that. On the way here, they'd investigated and sensed the surroundings, yet they'd clearly not noticed the slightest trace or aura of a restriction. Yet now, accidents had actually occurred one after another, and it caused them to be taken by surprise. Are you surprised? But come to think of it, if you find out, how am I going to catch a turtle in a jar? Lin Sun said calmly. During this period of time, when he was setting up the formation, he'd already thought about all kinds of possible situations. For example, in order not to arouse the enemy's attention, Lin Sun spent a lot of effort to isolate all auras with the unique power of the Taoist pattern formation. Otherwise, how would the enemy dare to approach so fearlessly? This was called catching a turtle in a jar. Kuan Ba Chio and the others' faces darkened. This damn little bastard, did he really think that he could reverse the situation by setting up a few formations? Let's attack that formation. Immediately, more than a dozen peerless sages moved out and rushed towards the God-breaking kill formation. Whether it was the Earth Punishment Formation or the God-breaking kill formation, they were too powerful and could kill a true saint. If they didn't destroy it, it would definitely cause an unimaginable blow to the army of the 7 territories after a long time. Seeing that the power of the God-breaking kill formation was also restrained, Kuan Ba Chio and the others finally relaxed and looked at Lin Sun coldly. Little bastard, what else do you have? Just use it. Someone shouted. As they spoke, they were all attacking the absolute kill formation where Lin Sun was. The formation roared violently and kept rolling. It would be broken soon if nothing went wrong. At that time, in the eyes of Kuan Ba Chio and the others, a strong killing intent flashed. At that time, this kid would die without a doubt. As for the formation that protected the camp of Lin Shi, it was not taken seriously by Kuan Ba Chio and the others. After killing Lin Sun, with their strength, they could easily destroy it and destroy it. However, Lin Sun snapped his fingers and said, "Old bastard, you have a good eye? You guessed it right. Look again." As he spoke, he stretched out his hand and pointed. Kuan Ba Chio and the others were stunned and almost cursed in their hearts. There really was more? Soundlessly, in a place extremely far away, a formation energy that was like a rain of immortal light surged out, forming a vast misty formation. The gray mist lingered in the air. A series of dull thuds could be heard in the surrounding area. Groups of experts widened their eyes and fell to the ground. Their bodies were perfectly fine, but their souls had already been erased. This was the killing formation of soul destruction. The mist could not be dispelled at all. It covered the whole world. All the experts who were shrouded in it struggled to no avail. They fell to the ground in shock and fear. The strange and horrifying scene caused countless sharp cries to resound in the surroundings. Isn't it wonderful? Lin Sun withdrew his gaze and looked at Kuan Ba Chio and the others with cold eyes. For this day, I have prepared for nearly half a year and devoted a lot of effort. Even my own cultivation has been delayed a lot. Now it seems that these efforts are worth it. The indifferent voice drifted, making the faces of Kuan Ba Chio and the others gloomy. They really didn't expect that Lin Sun's formation was so closely linked, and all of them were so powerful and lethal. Immediately, a group of top sages could not sit still and rushed to the killing formation of soul destruction in the distance. The situation in front of him instantly became clear. The killing formation of soul destruction, killing formation of soul destruction, killing formation of soul destruction, restrained a group of top sages respectively. Among them, Lin Sun's killing formation of soul destruction had the most top sages. Although part of the army of the 7 regions was slaughtered, there were 210,000 people after all. The casualties were less than 1/10. They were constantly attacking the 8 defenses formation that was like the kingdom of the gods. However, it had not worked yet. At least for the time being, the experts of the ancient desolation realm in the temporary camp were safe. This made Xiaohao and Ruo Wu involuntarily recall that before the war, Lin Sun had said that he would fight the enemy alone. At that time, everyone thought he was crazy, but now it seemed that all the situations seemed to be coming true. Childish, as long as you die, everything will be solved naturally. Suddenly, someone spoke in a cold voice that shook the heavens and the earth. "Everyone, attack with all your strength and kill this man." Kuan Ba Chio roared. In their eyes, the killing formation of soul destruction was about to be destroyed. But at this moment, Lin Sun suddenly let out a long laugh. His bearing was disdainful and majestic. "It's too late. Do you think I was talking nonsense with you just now? I was just waiting for an opportunity. Now, the opportunity is here." Swish! Lin Sun, who had not made a move, waved his sleeve, and the remaining 12 holy treasures that had been refined into formation plates were divided into 3 groups and whistled in 3 directions. Boom! First was the Earth Annihilation Formation. With the 3 formation plates, its power was completely activated. Within the formation, it was like an ocean of sword chi. The dense sword chi was like a stormy sea, slashing the sky above and the 9 nether below. It spread in all directions with a murderous aura. After that, a change occurred within the Godbreak Slaughter formation along with this. Dazzling and gorgeous thunderstorms surged as numerous seemingly ethereal images of the lightning Tao actually surged into appearance, and they were like lightning spirits and gods of lightning of legend. Then, the killing formation of soul destruction also changed. The fog was like a sea of clouds that covered the sky and the earth. In the gray color, a strange rain of light flickered. In the end, the absolute heaven slaughter formation that was originally on the verge of collapse also suddenly underwent a transformation amidst a world-shaking rumble. If it was said that there was a starry sky with thousands of stars rotating before, now the killing formation of soul destruction was a sea of stars, in which there were bright rivers of stars surging. A series of changes were completed in one go. At the same time, the formation of 4 extremes resonated with each other and merged into one, covering the surrounding area of 100 miles. It was also at this time that the formation of 4 extremes and 8 defenses was completely presented to the world. If one looked down from the sky, one would notice that merely the energy of restrictions emanated by this grand formation had stretched to an area of 1,500 kilometers, and it conformed with the heavens and the earth to form a great imposing aura of the heavens and the earth are united. It seemed that it was fighting against the world. This was the true face of the formation of 4 extremes and 8 defenses, which took Lin Sun nearly half a year to set up with the cyclic stars formation as the foundation. Oh no, what kind of holy prohibition is this? Damn it, I'm trapped. I can't move. It's not working underground either. There's a dense power of prohibition. At this moment, Kuan Ba Chio and other top sages all changed their faces and felt a little bad. At this moment, they seemed to be in a boundless sea of stars and had lost all contact with the outside world. At the same time, in other areas, groups of top sages were trapped in other killing formations, and they also felt that something was wrong. This was the real no way to heaven, no way to hell. If they couldn't break the formation, the consequences would be unimaginable. As for the hundreds of thousands of soldiers of the 7 regions, they were also trapped. They only felt that their eyes were blurred, and the scenery in front of them had completely changed. They couldn't find a way out, let alone continue to attack the temporary camp. Looking around, there was a boundless sea of stars, a world of sword chi like an ocean, a kingdom of thunder with raging thunderstorms, and a land of nothingness filled with mist. All the invading enemies had fallen into the trap at this moment. Lin Sun put his hands behind his back, and a cold light flashed in his deep eyes. The real killing began from this moment.